Chapter 390. Murphy actually felt that something was wrong today. When she woke up early in the morning from the hotel, Mo Shawan had brought her a sleeveless black dress and a pair of long black gloves. She looked extremely elegant. If there was a need to give an example, then this little black dress was a little like the classic picture of Audrey Hepburn with a smoking pipe in Yang Yi's previous life. Murphy was tall and beautiful. If she wore it, her charm would not be inferior to Hepburn's. However, it was winter now. Murphy, who never liked to wear clothes against the season to cater to her fans, didn't want to wear this dress that looked very cold. However, Mo Shawan gave her a thick cashmere windbreaker. It wasn't cold, but it was even more awkward to wear it. "I didn't bring any other clothes." Mo Shawan told a lie that no one would believe, but Murphy believed it. She didn't let her preferences bring trouble to Mo Shawan. She still wore these clothes and boarded the plane together. There were still many media reporters waiting at the entrance of the hotel and around the airport. The moment they boarded, they took a few photos of her. However, everyone could only see Murphy's windbreaker and couldn't see the dress inside. This was also the strange part. Without thinking too much, Murphy returned to Zhongqing. Mo Shawan got in the car and easily got rid of the paparazzi. Now that Murphy was popular, there were more and more paparazzi following her. It was very annoying, so Mo Shawan could only drive around the ring highway and use it to get rid of the paparazzi. The car stopped in front of a coffee shop at the corner of the street. Before Murphy got out of the car, she turned her head and asked, "Shawan, why don't you go up and drink something to warm your stomach?" Mo Shawan was much more alert. She smiled and said, "No need, sister. I also need to go back and rest. You and brother-in-law have fun." If Mo Shawan wanted to go up, then Murphy could roughly guess that there was a surprise waiting for her, just like last time on her birthday. Unfortunately, Mo Shawan saw through her little trick and did not reveal any flaws. Seeing that Murphy had gone to the backyard, Mo Shawan started the car and took out her phone to send a message. "Brother-in-law, my sister is here. She's going upstairs. Hurry up and start." Mo Shawan didn't plan to stay and watch. Although it was a crucial moment for her cousin, she would have to eat dog food if she stayed. Mo Shawan decided to just watch the video. If it was too boring, she could just skip it. She couldn't torture herself. Back at Murphy's place, she was very curious. It was already Saturday. Why weren't Yang Yi and she playing in the coffee shop downstairs? Why were they still at home? However, when she opened the door, Murphy sensed that something was wrong. The air was filled with the fragrance of roses. Although it had been blown away by the spring breeze, Murphy was still very sensitive to the fragrance of flowers. She could vaguely feel that something was about to happen. Stepping on the stairs to the second floor, Murphy finally understood where the fragrance came from. Now, Murphy was stepping on rose petals. Or rather, the entire staircase was covered with rose petals, as if it had turned into a flower staircase. Could it be? No matter how stupid Murphy was, she understood. With every step she took, her heart began to pound. Walking upstairs, she realized that the corridor was also covered with rose petals, forming a bright and beautiful red carpet. The heater was on upstairs. Murphy took off her jacket and hung it on the hanger. Then, she slowly walked in. The living room was very quiet. The coffee table in the middle had been moved away. The rose petals and plastic candles formed a heart shape. The flickering candlelight was very beautiful. Murphy's crystal-clear eyes reflected the flickering candlelight. She seemed to be mesmerized. But where was she? It seemed that the whole room was empty. Murphy was a little surprised and a little confused. What's going on? Suddenly, the door of the study opened. The melodious sound of a violin came out. It was as if a lover was sobbing, and it immediately plucked Murphy's heartstrings. Note 1. She turned around and saw Yang Yi, who was wearing the same black suit, playing the violin and slowly walking out of the study with a smile. Yang Yi was wearing a suit? Yes. Yang Yi was wearing a suit. This was the first time in nearly a year that Murphy had seen him wear a suit. However, this suit was different from the suits of the security guards and bodyguards. It was tailor-made. It was not long or short, and it was very slim. Murphy also didn't expect that Yang Yi would be so handsome after wearing a suit. Yang Yi, who was 187 meters tall, should have been a clothes hanger. However, his usual casual clothes always covered his charm. Now that he was wearing a suit, his slender and tall body, as well as his strong and healthy figure under the clothes, were fully revealed. His originally robust face wasn't considered handsome, but under the suit, he actually had the unique handsomeness of a mature uncle. It made Murphy's heart, which was no longer a young girl, beat like a young girl's. Of course, the most beautiful was still the violin song. Murphy had never heard it before, but she was also intoxicated from the beginning. The song wasn't like classical music, which had a complicated and rigorous structure. Instead, it was very much like pop music. Every section was very tight and had a distinct melody. Even if there were changes, they were changes based on this melody. Of course, Murphy didn't overly pursue rigor. She liked the melody that Yang Yi was playing. She always had the feeling that she couldn't help but hum it out. It seems that there should be lyrics here? Murphy had an inexplicable feeling. Just like how Murphy felt before, the long violin sound was like a lover's whisper. It was also like the love that Murphy was looking forward to. In the slow rhythm, it gradually sublimated. Yang Yi stopped a few steps in front of Murphy. As he played the violin, his expression seemed to be intoxicated and also seemed to be very calm. However, Murphy could see that in his deep eyes, only her figure was reflected. Was this the marriage proposal that he wanted to prepare for her? Murphy's thoughts suddenly moved. She woke up from the beautiful violin sound. She looked at Yang Yi with some surprise and understood in her heart. Although she was already mentally prepared to go and get the marriage certificate with Yang Yi without any ceremony, her heart was still looking forward to it. Murphy liked Yang Yi's current state very much. She didn't like to propose in public. Although many girls liked others to witness the results of their love, Murphy didn't like it. She thought that love was about two people cherishing each other. With you and me, it was enough. Yang Yi chose to propose at home, just in time to take care of her soft heart. The world of flowers, paved with flowers, and the candles arranged in a heart shape were simple but not simple. It was also perfectly in line with the romance she wanted. What's more, the person she loved the most played a violin song for her. Murphy, who was easily satisfied, was so touched that she only wanted to wait for Yang Yi to ask, "Are you willing?" And then she would respond loudly and affirmatively. She was a little impatient. Of course, how could she be so unreserved? The song didn't take long to finish. Yang Yi put down the violin. Murphy asked shyly, "What song is this? Is it an original? Why haven't I heard of it before?" "Sure." Yang Yi raised his index finger at her and smiled. "There's more." Yang Yi picked up a remote control from the side and pressed it gently. The song just now played from the stereo, but it was no longer a pure violin song. It was a combination of piano and other instruments. What was going on? Just when Murphy was a little surprised, Yang Yi opened his mouth and sang, "When you're old, when your hair is white." Chapter 391. Murphy's previous guess was verified. Yang Yi really used this tune to write a song. Before Murphy had time to feel surprised, she was attracted by the first line of the lyrics. "When you're old, your hair is white, and you're sleepy." Although women were over 30 and the last thing they wanted was to hear people mention that they were old, Yang Yi slowly sang such a sentence in this beautiful melody, with the uniqueness of a pledge of eternal love. "When I'm old, my hair is white, what will he do? When you're old, you can't walk, napping by the fire, reminiscing your youth." Murphy was eager to hear the latter part, wanting to know how deeply Yang Yi was going to confess. Although Yang Yi's voice could now cross many ranges, what he didn't deliberately change was his unique magnetic voice. Although it had some vicissitudes of life, the sense of time was the best seasoning for this song. How many people have loved your youthful and happy times, adoring your beauty, false or true? Only one person still loves your devout soul, loves the wrinkles on your old face. When singing this part, Yang Yi looked at Murphy affectionately, as if telling her that that person was standing in front of her. Murphy couldn't help but tremble in her heart, and tears couldn't help but gush out of her beautiful eyes. The first line was simply singing the reality that Murphy was facing now. As a singer, since her debut at a young age, she had been pursued and praised by countless people because of her devastatingly beautiful appearance. Yes, so many people liked her when she was young, liked her beautiful appearance. Even now, under her micro-broadcasting, there were always many fans shouting, "Murphy, don't cry, we love you." What cry? Wasn't it just singing, "Listen to the sea. Listen, the sound of the sea crying"? But what others said, Murphy didn't care at all, because those people only came for her appearance, for her fame. Just like before, when she suffered a setback and had nothing, the fans who shouted that they loved her now were infatuated with some celebrity at that time. If one day, she also grew old like the song said, and her old face was full of wrinkles, would those people continue to love her? Or, would they still remember Murphy, who had once been crazy about her? Only he in front of her would never leave her. Yang-yi didn't sound like a confession, more like a confession. Love your devout soul, loves the wrinkles on your old face. When this sentence was sung, Murphy felt that the happiness in her heart was about to overflow. Who didn't like the adoring eyes of their lover when they were young? That was the greatest affirmation of one's appearance. But that was only the initial joy of love. When it came to marriage, who wouldn't worry about gains and losses? After all, youth was gone. No matter how beautiful the face was, it would disappear in the blink of an eye. Only love that was deep in the bones and immersed in the depths of the soul could last long. This sentence was a pledge of undying love in another sense. When you're old, your eyebrows drooping, the light is dim and uncertain. Yang-yi's rhythm slowed down again, creating a warm and sweet atmosphere of old age. When the wind blows, your news, this is the song in my heart. The accompaniment was raised again. How many people have loved your youthful singing, loved your beauty, feigned or not? Only one person still loves your devout soul, loves the wrinkles on your old face. Whether it was the melody or the charm of Yang-yi's singing, it was Murphy's favorite part. She looked at Yang-yi with blurred eyes. This tall man seemed to be the best support in the world. When you're old, your eyebrows drooping. Yang-yi put the violin and bowstring on the table of the TV cabinet. As he sang softly, he reached out his hand to Murphy. At this moment, Murphy only had Yang-yi in her eyes. She pursed her lips, held back the tears of happiness in her eyes, and happily held Yang-yi's big hand. When I'm old, I really hope that this song is for you. Yang-yi sang the last sentence with himself as the protagonist, but it also had a profound meaning. Hand in hand, grow old together. When we're old, you and I will both have white hair, but we can still look at each other and sing love songs like this to each other. This is probably the most beautiful wish, right? Murphy looked at Yang-yi's face in a daze, listening in a daze. She didn't even notice that she was led to the sofa by Yang-yi, sitting next to the heart-shaped candlelight array. If one looked carefully, the living room, even the corridor, and the foyer were all equipped with single-lens reflex cameras, DV cameras, and so on. Right now, facing Yang-yi and Murphy was a professional camera with a flashing red light. It was the same camera that Wang Chao had used to shoot Du Yuanlei's movie. This was the most memorable romantic moment. How could Yang-yi just propose and be done with it? He had consulted Wang Chao and arranged for the best camera position. He even borrowed cameras from Wang Chao and other photography students, including his own single-lens reflex camera. There were 6 sets of cameras used today, and 3 were placed in different angles in the living room. He strived to preserve this beautiful scene from all angles. Of course, once the cameras were turned on, Yang-yi didn't have to worry about it anymore. And in the lens of the professional camera in the main position, Mo Fei was wearing a pure black dress, her thin shoulders were slightly exposed, and a pair of black velvet gloves that covered her elbows. She gently propped herself up on the edge of the sofa, elegant like a black swan. But under the flickering candlelight, this black swan's beautiful face and beautiful eyes intertwined to form an intoxicated expression. It seemed to be telling a beautiful story. A high and mighty princess graced the world with her presence, but she didn't put on any airs. Without hesitation, she fell in love with the man in front of her, who had begun to kneel down on one knee for her. There were still some differences from yesterday's rehearsal. Yang-yi performed a little magic trick here. His two hands clasped together, and then a blooming rosebud with delicate green leaves appeared. Under Murphy's surprised gaze, he handed it to her and helped her take off the glove on her left hand while he was at it. It couldn't be helped. Who told the plan to be unable to keep up with the changes? Mo Shawan actually made Murphy wear a glove. But the flaws couldn't obscure the beauty. Yang Yi's movements were smooth and didn't look out of place at all. At this moment, the door to the study was pushed open again. A little girl wearing a beautiful white princess dress slowly walked out with a small black box in her hands. She had a sincere expression on her face as she slowly walked over. Dad's song was very pleasant to listen to, but she didn't understand the deep meaning of the lyrics. She wasn't moved to the point of being distracted like her mother. The little girl still remembered her father's request. After her father finished singing, just like yesterday's rehearsal, she stood on her tiptoes and opened the door to the study. Then, holding the box, she walked over step by step. In order to complete her task well, she was very serious. Every step she took was strictly according to yesterday's rehearsal. Wearing this white princess dress, the little girl looked like a little angel. That serious expression of hers, under the contrast of the candlelight, appeared very sincere. "Thank you, Shishi." Yang-yi took the diamond ring box from his daughter's hands and lovingly patted her little head. However, the little girl who had completed her task couldn't leave yet. She stood to the side and witnessed this wonderful moment. Yang-yi, who had already knelt on one knee, opened the box in front of the happy Murphy holding the rose, revealing the sparkling and translucent diamond ring inside. But Yang-yi wasn't in a hurry to propose. He first recited a poem. Chapter 392. Yang-yi looked at Murphy affectionately and softly recited, "I have walked on many bridges, seen many clouds, drank many types of wine, but I have only ever loved a person at the best age." The poem was very short and not at all dragging, but it expressed Yang-yi's love for Murphy very well. Even this expression was very deep. Murphy would not know that Yang-yi was referring to his experience in both lives. He had walked so many roads and seen so many sceneries, but the one he loved was only this Murphy who was in her prime and blooming at her most beautiful moment. The poem was very beautiful. It was written by Shan Kongwen, who wrote Border Town in his previous life. This was a love letter that Mr. Shan wrote to his wife, Zhang Zhaohe, who was still his student at that time, when Mr. Shan was 26 years old. In order to pursue Zhang Zhaohe, Mr. Shan wrote hundreds of love letters, and this was just one of them. Not only this one, Yang-yi also read another one, which was also very suitable for the Murphy that he liked. "I was lucky to see you smile once again, beside the lotus pot that was scattered by the night breeze. There was a fragrance in your smile, I was not surprised at all. Originally, when you smiled, there was something more refreshing than a fragrance." However, when Yang-yi chose this love poem as his proposal, Yang-yi was still hesitant, because in reality, the love between Mr. Shan and Miss Zhang was not as perfect as this poem. Note 1. But Yang-yi later understood that he and Murphy were different from Mr. Shan and Miss Zhang. He and Murphy had similar personalities and the same hobbies. It could be said that both of them were in line with each other's best imaginations. Their union was a match made in heaven, and not because of a little romance when they were young. So what if he used this poem? So, after reciting this poem, Yang-yi looked at Murphy affectionately. He took out the diamond ring from the box, raised it gently and said softly, "I don't want to search anymore, and I don't want to wait anymore, because with you, my life is enough. Murphy, will you marry me?" Murphy was already trying her best to hold it in, but a teardrop still fell from the corner of her eye. She had been pursing her lips, but in the end, she couldn't help but smile, revealing a few white teeth. Her face was brimming with joy. "Actually, I also have something to say to you." Murphy didn't nod her head immediately. Instead, she tried her best to say the words that she had already prepared in her heart. "If I hadn't met you, I could have endured the loneliness." Murphy had forgotten where she had read this sentence from. She softly said, "But now, I find that my world can't be without you." "Yes, Yang-yi, I am willing to marry you." Murphy stretched out her left hand and said those words seriously. She finally burst into tears and her voice choked up. She was so happy that tears blurred her beautiful eyes. Yang Yi gently held Murphy's left hand and put the diamond ring on her ring finger. The moment the ring was put on, it was as if a ceremony had been completed. There was a mysterious connection between the two of them. "Why are you crying?" Yang Yi pulled Mo Fei up from the sofa, stood up, and hugged her into his arms. He gently wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and cheeks lovingly, and said softly, "This is a happy event. You should be happy and smile." Murphy nodded vigorously. She hugged Yang Yi's waist and smiled brightly. Her watery eyes turned into crescents and tears came out of her eyes. On the side, she blinked her big eyes and looked at her parents. The little girl couldn't understand the conversation just now, but she could still feel the strong love between her parents. However, the little girl waited for a long time and saw that her parents were still standing motionlessly in each other's arms. She was a little anxious for them. That's not right. She couldn't wait any longer. She lifted her heavy little skirt and walked over, tugging at her father's suit jacket. At this time, Yang Yi woke up from the sweet moment with Murphy. He looked down at the little girl in confusion. "Papa, you haven't kissed me yet." She raised her head and said innocently, "You can't kiss before marriage." Yang Yi said that at that time, but she was confused. Proposing and getting married were two different concepts. She didn't understand it clearly at that time, so she thought that it was not allowed to kiss before the proposal. In other words, they had to kiss after the ceremony. It was a mistake. When the little girl said that, Yang Yi and Murphy were both stunned. She thought that her father didn't understand, so the little girl commanded seriously, "You have to kiss Mom." At this time, Murphy finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. She recovered from being touched and happy just now and returned to her normal state. She patted Yang Yi's chest and said angrily, "You're teaching she these things." Yang Yi opened his mouth and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was also wronged. The next day was Sunday. The Civil Affairs Bureau was also on holiday, so they couldn't get the marriage certificate yet. However, Yang Yi still got up early and kept a good schedule. However, Murphy, who was too happy last night, was still sleeping soundly with Yang Yi. However, the corners of her mouth were still filled with a happy smile. Her white and smooth jade arm was outside the quilt, and the ring on her ring finger was very conspicuous. She couldn't bear to take it off because she said that when she went to work, she couldn't wear the ring for the time being. Now that she was at home, she didn't want to take it off even if she could wear it. Even when they were climbing to the top last night, she looked at Yang Yi's eyes in a daze and the ring on her hand that was stroking Yang Yi's face. Yang Yi put her arm under the quilt and kissed Murphy's forehead dotingly. Then he put on his clothes and went out for a run and to buy vegetables. Today, Yang Yi was in a very good mood. When he was shopping for groceries, the aunties in the market noticed that something was amiss. They laughed and teased Yang Yi, asking him what was the joyous occasion. When he came back to prepare breakfast, Yang Yi was also in high spirits. He hummed a song and waved the iron shovel. She was awakened by his singing. The little girl, wearing pajamas, rubbed her hazy eyes and walked out of the bedroom in a daze. She first found her missing mother in the second bedroom skillfully. Then she pouted and ran to the kitchen to complain to her father. "Papa, Mom is not good. She even slept in." Yang Yi was stunned for a moment. He laughed and rubbed his daughter's little head, saying, "It's not that your mother slept in. She was too tired yesterday. Well, she was too tired from work. So she slept a little longer. You have to be considerate of your mother." She tilted her little head and thought for a while with her still confused mind. Then she nodded and said, "Okay, but I didn't sleep in." She is great." Yang Yi smiled and picked up the little girl to wash her face and brush her teeth. Then he came back and continued to make breakfast for she and Murphy. Today's breakfast was very rich. There was crispy fresh milk, walnut peanut paste, and a plate of fried banana pie, so it took a little effort. She smelled the tempting fragrance and couldn't help but drool. Papa, I want to eat. The little girl felt hungry. Right away. It'll be ready soon. Yang Yi was beating the walnut peanut paste. He smiled and comforted the little girl. How about I sing you a song first? After the song, you can eat. Today's mood was really high. Yang Yi wanted to sing again. Chapter 393. Okay. She clapped her little hands happily. The fun temporarily suppressed the delicious food in terms of status. Yang Yi set up the automatic program for the soybean milk machine to boil. Then, he began to snap his fingers, twisting his shoulders and shaking his head according to the rhythm. This action was quite interesting. She, who was standing at the kitchen door, couldn't help but giggle. The sun blinks at me, the birds sing to me. Yang Yi sang with such emphasis for the first time. It was as if he was deliberately imitating the tone used to coax a child. Meet Mom sang. She watched him follow the lyrics. One moment, his right hand was blinking in front of his eyes, and the next moment, he was listening. He sang and acted at the same time. The 8-foot-tall man was like a child, doing childish actions. It gave people an indescribable feeling of incongruity. But so what? Today, Yang Yi was an old man chatting with a crazy teenager. He was in a good mood and also played with his daughter. I'm a hard-working and not clingy little fairy. Yang Yi's tone completely imitated Father Jia's singing style in his previous life. In the end, he even put his hands on his waist and played the role of a little fairy in a seductive manner. Ha ha, ha ha. She was amused by her father and couldn't stop laughing. She felt that it was very funny. She understood what a fairy meant. Wasn't it the little fairies who were beaten the most miserably in Journey to the West, and often had to take the blame for the big fairies? Don't ask me where I'm from, and don't ask me where I'm going. I want to pick the most beautiful flowers. In the kitchen, there was a bottle of daffodils that Murphy had arranged when she came back a few days ago. Daffodils bloomed in early spring. When she bought them, there were a few buds. Now, all of them were in full bloom. The jade-white corolla and tender yellow calyx looked extremely beautiful. However, today they were tragically killed. Yang Yi sang as he plucked one of the flowers. Then, he pinched it with a smile and handed it to his daughter in a flattering manner. He continued to sing, "For my little princess." She happily accepted it. She really liked her father's nickname of Little Princess. Oh, I almost forgot. Yang Yi suddenly jumped on the ground and patted his head. What did he play? She was a little confused. But soon, Dad continued to sing, "The king asked me to patrol the mountains, so I'll take a look around the human world." The melody of this line was very pleasant, and it was catchy like, "Let it go." She's eyes lit up immediately. Beat my drums, beat my gongs, life is full of rhythm. The kitchen was no longer big enough to showcase Yang Yi's acting talent. He snapped his fingers as he approached she. The girl giggled and retreated step by step into the dining room. The king asked me to patrol the mountains, catch a monk for dinner. Yang Yi really did patrol around the dining table. However, she understood this time. She was sure that her father was the little monster in Journey to the West. She giggled and said, "No way. Tang Seng can't be eaten. He can't eat people." Then let's sing like this. Yang Yi excitedly changed the lyrics on the spot. The king asked me to patrol the mountains, catch a girl for breakfast. Yang Yi pointed at she and winked at her. I can't either. I don't taste good. The girl waved her hand, but she also smiled. She still knew that her father was teasing her. The water in this mountain stream. When she came out, she didn't close the door behind her. The movements in the kitchen and dining room still woke Murphy up. She turned over and looked at her body that still had some hickeys. She couldn't help but blush. She secretly scolded Yang Yi. Fortunately, after she put on her pajamas, those hickeys were covered. There was still a hickey mark on her white neck. However, She didn't need to go anywhere today. She didn't need to worry about being discovered. When she was combing her disheveled hair, Yang Yi's singing entered her ears. Although she didn't know what song Yang Yi was singing, Murphy guessed that this guy had composed another song. It sounded quite interesting. When she came out of the bedroom, she saw Yang Yi singing and dancing like a child. She stopped in surprise. Was this still the usual steady Yang Yi? Of course, now that Yang Yi was playing with his daughter, it was more interesting. Murphy suddenly felt that he had a lot more life in him. The king called me. Yang Yi made a posture of carrying a weapon and sang while twisting and turning. Suddenly, he felt that someone was looking at him from behind. He subconsciously looked back and his voice was suddenly stuck. Murphy was covering her mouth and laughing secretly. She was leaning on the door frame and looking at him. Yang Yi was embarrassed. It was fine to play with Shi for a while, but it didn't mean that he was shameless. Now that Murphy saw it, Yang Yi was so embarrassed that he couldn't continue his performance. Continue singing. I think it's quite nice. Murphy giggled. Her beautiful eyes were filled with joy. Cough cough. How do I sing this? Yang Yi began to play dumb. However, she believed him. The little girl was very enthusiastic. She raised her little hand and stood up for her father. Mom, I can sing it. I'll sing it for you. Under Yang Yi's astonished gaze, she really began to sing. The king called me to patrol the mountains. I'll go around the human world. The little girl's voice was very childish, but this kind of innocent singing was also full of childlike interest. It was very nice to listen to, even better than Yang Yi's singing. I don't remember the rest. She still only knew the first line. Then, she stuck out her little tongue and said with an embarrassed face. Yang Yi and Murphy couldn't help but laugh. Murphy picked up her daughter and affectionately rubbed her little head. You've already sung very well. Next time, let Daddy teach you the whole song. Yes, I want to sing. I want to sing it for Chi and Xionair. She waved her little hand and said happily. At this time, Murphy saw the daffodil in Shi's hand. She suspiciously pulled her daughter's hand and looked at the broken flower bud. Hey, this daffodil looks very familiar. Yang Yi suddenly quivered. He just remembered that he was too happy and picked the flower that Murphy arranged. Cough cough. This walnut peanut paste is already cooked. I'll go get it. Our breakfast today is good. Haha. Yang Yi laughed and quickly slipped into the kitchen. She didn't hesitate to betray her father. She giggled and explained to her mother, Daddy gave this to me. Because I'm a little princess. What are you? Murphy didn't react for a moment. A little princess. The little girl said it very smoothly, as if this word should be pronounced in this way. She also said seriously, Daddy said it. Generally, Murphy would let Mo Xiaowan take care of her own micro-broadcasting. Except for sometimes organizing some interactive activities between stars and fans on the micro-broadcasting, Murphy rarely logged on her micro-broadcasting and rarely shared her life with others. However, Yang Yi's proposal yesterday made her overflowing with happiness. Until today, she still felt happy. Even Murphy couldn't avoid this at this moment. She also had an impulse to announce her good news to the whole world. If it weren't for the original plan to wait until the contract was signed and then announce it to the public, Murphy couldn't help but want to show her happiness at this moment. Although she couldn't say it out loud, Mo Fei still wanted to express her feelings at the moment. On Yang Yi's computer, after logging into her account, she pondered for a long time and finally sent a very obscure micro-broadcast. I'm sorry. I'm very happy. I've been smiling all the time. Not long after the micro-broadcasting was sent out, the fans under the post refreshed with many comments. Wow. Is it true? Murphy actually sent such a micro-broadcasting? The style is completely different. Could it be that her account was hacked? My Murphy is an iceberg beauty. She won't ripple like this. I guess the manager got it mixed up and sent his own Weibo to here. Hey, the person who sent the micro-broadcasting should be more careful. It was really obscure. The fans all thought it was a mistake or a joke. They all started to ridicule her. Chapter 394. In this world, due to the perfect copyright protection, the entertainment industry was unprecedentedly prosperous. In order to satisfy the public's desire to peep at the celebrities' privacy, the development of the paparazzi could not be underestimated. However, among the regular paparazzi army, there was a group of people who wandered on the edge of the law. They did not follow celebrities for the purpose of sensationalizing news, but for profit. The photos they took would first contact the victims. If the victims were not willing to spend money to redeem them, then they would sell them to the tabloids and take the opportunity to earn a lot of money. Sometimes, the paparazzi disdained to be associated with them, so they gave themselves a new name. Paparazzi Hunter. Lu Yu was a paparazzi hunter. Like other paparazzi hunters, he also fought alone. One person was an army. He wandered around the country alone, only to catch the most valuable news and then convert it into cash. 10 years ago, Lu Yu did not know what a paparazzi hunter was. He was just a conscientious salesman who needed to knock on door to sell his company's products, kitchen knives. Until one day, when he finished visiting a building and was preparing to leave tiredly, a paparazzi hunter found him and handed him a camera. He wanted his help, under the guise of selling, to secretly take a photo of a celebrity in the building. Lu Yu still had a flexible mind. He completed the task well. Not only did he get paid, but he also learned about the industry and paparazzi hunter's game from the triumphant boasting of the paparazzi hunter afterward. Lu Yu was moved. He quit his job and changed all his savings into a high-pixel camera. Without any qualifications, he directly threw himself into the industry. In the beginning of the year, Lu Yu had almost nothing. However, after getting through this difficult period, Lu Yu, who was familiar with the entertainment industry, quickly earned his first bucket of gold with his flexible mind. Then, it was unstoppable. Now, although Lu Yu was still fighting alone, he had already changed his guns. Not only was he equipped with various high-end equipment, but he also bought a car, rented an apartment, and even put his name on a major brokerage company. Who didn't know that Lu Yu, the paparazzi hunter, had a good reputation? He did not sell to two people. It could be said that the brokerage company hated and loved him. Recently, Lu Yu had come to Jiang City. He had his eyes on Murphy, who had risen to fame this year. Like the other paparazzi, LVU also encountered the difficulty that Mo Xiaowan would use the Ring Highway to get rid of them. However, LVU did not stay in front of Tianmei Company. He had his own way. With the help of the housing authority, LVU found out that Murphy had purchased a house in Binhai district and began to wait there. Not only did he sneak into Murphy's neighborhood, but he also drove the van in. He usually drove the machine and stayed in the van, waiting for Murphy to appear. But what made him feel strange was that Murphy hadn't appeared for a long time, even though he had seen the news that Murphy had returned to Rivertown. Could it be that she had another residence? For a few days during the spring festival, LVU was also waiting for Murphy, but he still didn't see her. During the long wait, LVU had some doubts about whether the information he had received was wrong. Because Murphy's car was on the Ring Highway, it was possible that she didn't live here. But his friends in the housing authority had helped him check. Murphy did indeed only have one property. Perseverance was the most precious spirit of the paparazzi. LVU was the same. His 10 years of experience told him that perseverance was victory. He decided to wait for a few more days. He would wait until the end of the month. He had a hunch that Murphy would definitely appear here. Sure enough, this day finally came. On Monday, when LVU was slurping noodles in the car, a large pickup truck drove over. At first, LVU didn't pay attention. He just glanced habitually. As a result, he saw the figure that he had been dreaming of coming down from the passenger seat. Murphy! Murphy! LVU hurriedly put down the bucket. He didn't bother to wipe his mouth and picked up the binoculars to look. It was indeed Murphy. What surprised LVU was that Murphy also carried a little girl from the back seat. LVU could clearly see through the binoculars that Murphy and the little girl were both smiling. This was not in line with her usual cold image. Who was that little girl? A big question mark appeared on LVU's head. No matter who it was, no matter what their relationship was. After regaining his senses, LVU quickly picked up the camera and took a few photos. Murphy took the little girl's hand and the two of them went upstairs. However, the experienced LVU didn't act rashly. He stayed in the car. If he remembered correctly, Murphy had just come down from the passenger seat. Then, there was another person in the driver's seat. Was it her assistant and manager, Mo Shawan? If the driver hadn't gotten off, then they should continue to set off. With the discovery of the little girl, LVU felt that his 1 month of waiting was worth it. The rest was to continue to track down and get to the bottom of it. He wanted to know the real relationship between Murphy and the little girl. Although the big pickup truck was very conspicuous and LVU could recognize it no matter where it was, he still copied down the license plate number of the car for insurance purposes. The reason why Mo Fei returned to her house was actually to get her household register. She did grow up in America. However, her nationality was still Chinese because her father used to have a green card in America. Later, he bought a farm and became an American farm owner. Then, he officially went through the immigration procedures. However, the old man still had a strong sense of patriotism. He registered Murphy's nationality as Chinese and her birthplace was their hometown, Taiwan. Later, because of work needs and Murphy bought a house in Zhongqing, she moved her household register to Zhongqing. Shi's nationality was also Chinese. Even though she was born in America, Murphy gave up her American citizenship. The little girl's household register was also under her mother's name. However, at that time, Murphy was no longer famous, so no one dug up this big news. Now that the role of the ID card had been greatly upgraded, the household register was almost useless. Therefore, Murphy didn't give anyone a chance to find out about her relationship with Shi. Today, she was going to get the marriage certificate with Yang Yi. So, she went back to the old house to get her household register. After a while, Murphy came down from upstairs. She went straight to the back seat. While fastening the child safety seat belt for Shi, she nodded to Yang Yi and smiled shyly. I got it. However, I haven't lived here for too long. The smell in the house is so strong. Murphy was actually in a good mood. However, when she thought about how she was going to officially marry Yang Yi today, she couldn't help but feel a little shy. Isn't this what you're looking forward to? Mo Fei was as happy as a young girl, but at the same time, she was secretly ashamed of her own smile. She wondered if she was being too obvious. Yang Yi's mood was a little complicated. Although he looked calm, he was actually a little nervous and expectant. He was going to get the certificate soon. What kind of experience would it be? Because of these emotions, Yang Yi seemed a little careless today. It wasn't until he drove on the road and passed a few traffic lights that he slowly realized that something was wrong. Murphy, there seems to be a car behind us that has been following us. Yang Yi frowned. He glanced at a van in the rearview mirror and said, Chapter 395. What car? Murphy looked back in confusion. Cece was also very curious. She twisted her little neck, but the high child safety seat blocked her view and she couldn't move. The little girl shouted unwillingly, I want to see it too, I want to see it too. Sit tight, or the traffic police uncle will come and arrest your papa. Murphy scared her. There's a silver gray van behind us. Yang Yi drove while looking at the rearview mirror. There was a car following behind them, separated by a few ordinary cars. When something happened, Yang Yi threw away all other distracting thoughts. His mind was very clear, and he could sense a faint strangeness. It wasn't a premonition that his life was in danger, but Yang Yi felt that he was being followed. Could it be the paparazzi? But I didn't go back to the company today. Murphy asked doubtfully. It was useless to think too much. Yang Yi couldn't get out of the car to find trouble with the stalker. He smiled and said, It's okay, I'll get rid of it. Sit tight. Yang Yi put the car in gear and stepped on the accelerator. The powerful horsepower of the tyrant wolf was reflected. It quickly sped up, and under Yang Yi's control, it nimbly shuttled through the traffic. After turning a few streets, it finally got rid of the silver-gray van behind them. This frightening urban racing made Murphy a little nervous, but she was very excited. She looked at the car passing through the window and felt that it was fun. She danced and giggled. Yang Yi slowed down the car, but she still didn't want to. Seeing the car behind them drive by, she anxiously shouted, "Papa, hurry up, we're going to be caught." "We're already here, why are you still driving so fast?" Yang Yi said with a smile. They arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau of the Binhai district. Perhaps it was because it hadn't been long since the New Year, but there weren't many people at the Civil Affairs Bureau today. Moreover, the newlyweds were all here for the wedding. Everyone was equally excited, thinking that they were the main characters of the day. Even when they saw Murphy wearing a mask and a sewing cap, they didn't think much of it. Yang Yi took the number and queued for a while before it was their turn. When their numbers were called, Murphy was a little nervous. Yang Yi looked at her. She was still a little at a loss. There was a smile in her eyes, but she stood there, unable to move her legs. Yang Yi smiled and reached out to grab Murphy's sweaty little hand and intertwined his fingers with hers. At this moment, Murphy calmed down. She moved closer to Yang Yi and looked at him sweetly. She whispered, "Let's go." Yang Yi held Murphy's hand with his right hand and she, who was looking around curiously, with his left hand. They walked into the marriage registration office. At this moment, it attracted the attention of the others in the waiting room. However, they only looked at she and were a little surprised. When they saw this little girl before, they thought that her parents were here to get a divorce. They didn't expect that they were here to get married. Could it be that they were divorcing and remarrying? Of course, these two adults looked very young. The possibility of them getting pregnant before marriage wasn't small. Regardless of the speculations of the onlookers, Yang Yi, Murphy, and she were already facing the marriage registration official. When the kind-looking middle-aged woman saw Murphy dressed as if she were in the terminal stage of a serious illness, she laughed and said, "Take off the hat and mask. You're not going to do anything. Why are you still wearing them when you're getting married?" It was Murphy who had forgotten. She hurriedly nodded and let go of Yang Yi's hand. She took off the hat and mask and put them in her bag. "Let me take a look at the household register first," the female official said to Yang Yi with a smile. It's your turn." Yang Yi patted his daughter's shoulder and smiled. She had been very eager to help her parents. Yang Yi gave her his and Murphy's household register. The little girl came to her senses and hurriedly took out her household registration booklet from her small bag. She ran forward and placed it on the table. She even tiptoed and reached out her hand to push the booklet in front of the woman. She said crisply, "Auntie, here you go." "Hey, what a cute little girl." "Thank you." Only then did the female official notice she. She took the household register and looked at Yang Yi in surprise. "Wait, this is our daughter." Yang Yi hurriedly explained and did not forget to add, "Our biological daughter." The female official was stunned for a moment. She looked at Yang Yi and Murphy again. She could not imagine that these two young people would actually bring such a big child to their wedding. She also subconsciously thought that this couple had divorced because of a quarrel and then remarried. This relationship was a little complicated, so she was only thinking about she and did not recognize Murphy. In order to confirm her guess, the female official opened Yang Yi's household register and saw that under Yang Yi's name, in the column of marital status, the word unmarried was written. What about the girl? The girl's name was Murphy, and she was also unmarried. Wait a minute, Murphy? Only then did the female official realize that the girl seemed very familiar. She moved her gaze from the photo in the household register to Murphy's face. "It's really Murphy," the female official exclaimed in surprise. "Hello." Murphy nodded at her, a little embarrassed. "Hey, my family likes your songs, they like you a lot. You're here too." The female official was a little excited when she saw the celebrity. She patted her head and smiled. "I forgot, you're here to get married. That's right, what else can you be here for?" The female official was indeed someone who often registered marriages for other people. She was cheerful and loved to smile. She spoke with a sense of familiarity, and it was easy for her to close the distance between strangers. After hearing her words, Murphy's nervousness and awkwardness disappeared a lot. She smiled at the other party and said, "Thank you. I'm here with my husband today to register my marriage." After knowing Mo Fei's identity, the female official was not surprised that they were married with such a big child. In their system, they had heard more detailed news than the gossip media. There were a lot of celebrities who got married in secret or even didn't get a marriage certificate. How many of them were actually married in reality? Hey, this is a happy occasion. Congratulations. Come, fill out this form first, and then go to the room next door to take a photo. You all know the procedure, right? The female official said enthusiastically. By the way, Murphy, can you give me an autograph later? My child likes you very much. No problem. Murphy and Yang Yi filled out the form. She looked up and said with a smile, "But please keep it a secret, because we don't plan to make the news public immediately." That's a must. We are the most strict about confidentiality, the female official said with a smile. She then looked at Shi and praised, "Aya, your daughter is really beautiful. A talented man and a beautiful woman. Your genes are really good." What talented man and beautiful woman? It was just a compliment. She also did not know what Yang Yi did. Yang Yi smiled. He patted Shi's little butt and reminded, "Shi, Auntie is praising you." Shi giggled and hid in her father's arms. Then, she stuck out her little head and shyly looked at the kind-looking auntie. She said sweetly, "Thank you, Auntie." Very obedient child. The female official took out a few pieces of candy from the drawer and stuffed them into Shi's hands. Here, they did not lack candy because many newlyweds would bring wedding candies. After the registration, they would give out candies to the officials. Chapter 396. Lu Yu looked at the big pickup truck turning in the traffic and gradually disappearing from his sight. He could only be stopped at the traffic light. He couldn't help but pat the steering wheel angrily. A month of waiting, and now he let them slip away. How could he be reconciled? Although he took a photo of Murphy and the little girl, which was a small gain, what could this photo prove? Others could also deny that they were relatives' children. As a veteran paparazzi hunter, he knew that such photos couldn't sell for a good price. He had to get some solid evidence. Lu Yu was not discouraged. He held back his energy and drove in the direction where the big pickup truck disappeared. He searched street by street. At this time, Yang Yi and Murphy were taking photos at the wedding ceremony. In order to take wedding photos, Yang Yi and Murphy were prepared, but it was nothing special. They didn't like to be too conspicuous. They both wore white shirts. After taking off their coats, they stood on the red background cloth. The contrast between the white shirt and the red background made them look particularly energetic. "Please wait a minute, master." Yang Yi gestured. He turned around and helped Murphy with her hair. Others were in high spirits when they were happy, but Murphy was in a daze today. She wore a hat before. After taking it off, her hair looked a little messy, but she didn't remember to tidy it up at all. "Do I need to touch up my makeup? I'm wearing light makeup today." Murphy was held by Yang Yi. She felt sweet in her heart, but she still asked with some worry. "No, it's good now." "Very beautiful," Yang Yi said softly. The master in charge of taking photos was used to it. He directed Yang Yi and Murphy to stand in a good position. As soon as the two smiled, he made a gesture and said, "Okay." "So fast." Mo Fei still hadn't finished thinking and asked in surprise. "Don't worry, I've taken photos for so many people. The effect is not a problem." The master in charge of taking photos waved his hand impatiently. He was past the age of chasing stars, but he didn't recognize Murphy. "Master Fang, I'll have to trouble you to take a few more photos and pick the best ones." Fortunately, Yang Yi had a tall, fat person to guide him, so he knew some unspoken rules. He smiled apologetically and stuffed a pack of cigarettes and a few folded bills into Mr. Fong's pocket for the photographer. "Sigh, actually, the picture just now is not bad." Master Fong glanced at his pocket and forced a smile on his face. "But if you want to take a few more photos, then take a few more. After all, you'll have to pay for the photos to be printed." What he said was not wrong. Although the attitude before and after he stuffed the money was different, the photos he took were not too flawed. Weren't all ID photos like this? It was still passable, but compared to the meticulous arrangement and post-processing, it was still a little different. Since the other party was so generous, Master Fong was also happy to accompany them. After taking a few wedding photos, she also appeared in the camera. Master Fong moved a stool for her so that the little girl, who was not tall enough, could also appear in the middle of her parents' camera. In the end, they had to choose a photo. Of course, the one to be pasted on the marriage certificate could only be a photo of Yang Yi and Murphy. However, Yang Yi, Murphy, and she all liked another photo. In the photo, with a red background, Yang Yi and Murphy had just looked at each other knowingly, and then they were facing the camera with smiles on their faces. Shi's smile was even more brilliant, and her big eyes were smiling like crescent moons. It was rare to take a photo of Yang Yi and Murphy smiling so naturally. Moreover, the family of three was in the same frame. No wonder Yang Yi and Murphy liked it very much. "Master Fong, please print a few more copies of this." After Yang Yi finished speaking, he explained to Murphy, "I want to put this in my wallet." "Me too. Put it in my wallet. I'll take it with me wherever I go." Murphy and Yang Yi smiled happily. She held the printed photo and refused to let go. She imitated her father, pouted her small mouth and said, "Then I want it too. I want to put it in my bag." "Then you put it in the inner layer. Don't lose it." Murphy helped her open the small bag and taught her to keep it well. The most sacred moment was when they received the marriage certificate from the female official. There were two small red booklets. When they opened it, there was a picture of the two of them in the same frame. Looking at Murphy, who had tears in her eyes, Yang Yi pulled her into his arms and whispered in her ear, "Wife." Actually, she was still a little unaccustomed to this address, but Murphy was full of joy when she heard it. She raised her head and shyly whispered back, "Hubby." As expected, she was not used to it. It was not as free and easy as when she called him by his name. However, this was a process of adaptation. The female official looked at them with a smile. She was definitely going to say some congratulatory words. Finally, congratulations on becoming a legal husband and wife. "Murphy, I wish you a happy and blissful life together." Usually, she would say things like having a baby soon. However, there was already such a big daughter next to her, so she did not say much. After all, she was a celebrity. Murphy did not lose her composure. She sorted out her excited emotions and, together with Yang Yi, gave out wedding candies to the officials in the Civil Affairs Bureau. Originally, Murphy wanted to ask the female official to help her give out the candies. However, when someone came to visit, the news spread within the Civil Affairs Bureau. Some of the officials who were fans of Murphy came to ask for her autograph. There were also a few who liked to watch the fun. Murphy and Yang Yi had no choice but to generously give them wedding candies. Of course, there were also officials who liked Murphy's fans. They asked to take a photo with Murphy. Even Yang Yi was not spared. At this joyous moment, how could Murphy refuse? She agreed to all of them one by one. After a while, in order not to delay other people's wedding work, the location of the group photo was moved to a meeting room in the Civil Affairs Bureau. No matter what, Murphy was still very happy that they were able to witness her and Yang Yi's happy moment. She just reminded them not to spread the news. At this moment, LVU, who had been driving and searching for Murphy's traces, finally found something. Yang Yi had been living a comfortable life for too long. He was a little careless. After he got rid of LVU, he did not drive far and arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Therefore, LVU searched a few streets and spent more than an hour. Finally, he saw the familiar big pickup truck on the side of the road. Who asked Yang Yi's car to be so conspicuous? There were probably not many tyrants in the entire Zhongqing. Moreover, this car was tall and big. It was parked on the side of the road and was a head higher than other cars. It was like a bus parked outside an ordinary van. LVU looked over and found it at a glance. Found it. LVU still could not believe his eyes because he did not think that he could find it. It was just that his stubbornness was causing trouble and he was unwilling to give up. Is it really this car? LVU stopped his van dozens of meters away. Then, he picked up his binoculars and looked at it again and again. However, the license plate was blocked by the car parked next to it. LVU could not confirm it. He gritted his teeth and set up the camera in the car. He turned on the recording and locked the car. Then, he grabbed a cell phone and walked out. He pretended to be a passerby and passed by the big pickup truck. Doing so was risky. He had been beaten up before. However, even if he was really beaten up, he was not afraid. The camera was recording. A celebrity beating someone up or a celebrity ordering someone to beat someone up. This was big news. Even if it was not exposed, any celebrity would have to pay to keep the peace. If he was beaten up, he could still earn back the medical fees with interest. Chapter 397. LVU wasn't beaten up. When he approached the car in fear, there was no one in the car. At the same time, LVU was slightly disappointed. However, there was still something to be happy about. LVU checked the license plate number, and it was exactly the same as what he had recorded before. It was indeed the car that Murphy was in, but what was she doing here? LVU looked around. At this time, he realized that the place where the car was parked on this street was right in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau. The other buildings were ordinary residential buildings. At most, there were some photo shops, printing shops, and some shops that rented clothes and sold clothes. It wasn't conspicuous. Civil Affairs Bureau? LVU's heart skipped a beat. 10 years of paparazzi experience told him that he was about to catch a big news. However, the closer it was to this moment, the calmer he had to be. LVU returned to his van in case he was exposed. However, he quickly frowned as he stared at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau and the big pickup truck. That's not right. LVU said to himself, previously, this car shook me off. It should have found out that I was following it. That meant that his van had been exposed. At this moment, LVU was so excited and nervous as if he was watching a spy drama. His head was spinning wildly. He drove the car into an alley and hid it. Then, alone, he took a high-definition camera and ran upstairs to a tea house opposite the Civil Affairs Bureau. Give me a pot of Phoenix Dan Kong, don't disturb me if there's nothing important. LVU picked a seat by the window and ordered a pot of tea. Then, he picked up the camera and stared at the Civil Affairs Bureau and the car. After waiting for a while, LVU's eyes lit up. He saw a tall man and Murphy walking out of the building of the Civil Affairs Bureau with their fingers interlocked. Of course, Murphy was still in disguise. However, LVU recognized the clothes on Murphy's body and the little girl in the tall man's arms. LVU held the camera and quickly zoomed in. He took a clear shot, especially the man's face. Who is that man? LVU had some doubts in his heart. He looked at the camera and couldn't find anyone with a similar face in his memory. Could it be that he's not from the entertainment industry? LVU thought to himself. But suddenly, he saw the man in the camera frown and turn his head to look over. LVU didn't know why, but when he saw this scene, he subconsciously shrank his head and hid the camera. He felt a sense of suffocation in his heart. Almost at the same time, Yang Yi, who was walking with Murphy to his car, also looked at the tea house. His sharp gaze fell in the direction of LVU. However, she could only see a bunch of flowers and plants planted on the balcony. Yang Yi frowned. He felt that something was amiss. If he was not mistaken, there should be someone spying on him from that direction. Did he make a mistake? No, how could there be a mistake? Yang Yi had always believed in his intuition. In his previous life, this intuition had saved his life several times. Glancing at the sign of the tea house downstairs, Yang Yi pondered for a moment and was ready to walk to the tea house. He wanted to find out what was going on. But Murphy, who didn't know what was going on, stopped him. Murphy just felt that Yang Yi's stop was somewhat inexplicable. Now that she saw that he was going in the wrong direction, she pulled him and said with a smile, "Here, the car is here." She also smiled and said, "I'm smarter than Papa. I recognized the car." The little girl thought it was funny. She laughed and leaned forward and back, lying on her father's shoulder. Murphy's words and his daughter's laughter made Yang Yi recover from the dangerous state of being spied on. Now, Yang Yi felt as if a lifetime had passed. Just now, he had indeed entered a tense state of fighting. But looking at Murphy's happy smiling eyes and she's innocent little face, Yang Yi realized that he was not in a chaotic and dangerous environment like in his previous life. That's right. In this world, with my identity, no one should be spying on me, right? Yang Yi said in his heart. He didn't feel that he was being spied on. Maybe it's just an illusion. What's wrong? Murphy saw that something was wrong with Yang Yi and asked with concern. Nothing. Yang Yi smiled and said to Murphy, "I was thinking, today is such a good day, should we go somewhere to celebrate? Let's go eat Western food, okay? I know a top-notch Western restaurant that hired a French chef." Murphy was interested, but suddenly she said with some embarrassment, "Of course, it might not be better than your cooking." "Then let's go there. I'll drive, you lead the way." Yang Yi smiled and waved his hand. He deliberately pretended to be a prodigal and said, "Today, let's go there. We're not going to order whatever is delicious, but whatever is expensive. You're in charge of being wasteful, I'm in charge of being romantic." Murphy couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. But whether Murphy covered her mouth or not, she was still wearing a mask. "Dad, where are we going?" She felt that it was very funny. She quickly pulled her father's clothes and asked, "We're going to a restaurant called 3 Waves and have a big meal." Yang Yi said casually, "You're talking nonsense. There's no 3 waves. There are only 2, romantic, wasteful." Murphy chuckled and explained to her daughter, "Actually, it's the restaurant that Mom brought you to before. It's a place to eat big ice cream." She's eyes lit up like a 10,000-volt light bulb. She clapped her little hands excitedly and shouted happily, "Okay, okay." You didn't know that he had walked through the gates of hell. He saw Yang Yi and Murphy get in the car through the gaps of the flowers. Then, the car slowly drove away from the street. At this time, he changed his posture from lying on the table to standing up. He looked at tyrannical Wolf's figure with some regret. However, it wasn't a pity. LVU had already taken the shot that he wanted. Next, it was time to confirm his guess. LVU went back to the car to tidy up. He changed into a security guard's outfit and walked towards the Civil Affairs Bureau building. "What are you doing?" A security guard uncle in the hall who was responsible for calling out numbers stopped him and asked suspiciously, "I'm a retired soldier. I'm here to ask about the subsidy policy for the retired soldiers this year. Didn't I hear that it was changed?" LVU said in Mandarin with a dialect accent. Hearing his words, the security guard uncle's attitude towards him was much gentler. He even kindly gave him directions. "You go forward and turn right. There's an elevator to the 6th floor." "Oh, okay. Thank you, brother." LVU took out a cigarette and gave it to the security guard. Although he couldn't smoke, the security guard still accepted it and stuffed it into his pocket. Then, LVU smiled and said, "Brother, is it hard for you to be on duty here?" "It's hard. I have to stand all the time. 8 hours a day." The security guard uncle complained. After chatting with the security guard for a while, LVU pretended to ask casually, "There are so many people getting married at the Civil Affairs Bureau every day. Have you seen a celebrity? Don't we have a lot of celebrities in Bin Hai?" "Who said no? Now is the most critical time to brag." The security guard uncle looked left and right. When he saw that no one was paying attention, he covered his mouth and lowered his voice and said to LVU, "Let me tell you. Just now, a big star called Murphy came to get married. LVU was ecstatic, but he didn't show it. He just pretended not to believe it and said, "No way? Is it true?" "It's true. I heard it from the people inside. It's a big star." The security guard uncle obviously didn't know much about the entertainment industry. "Is there a photo? Let me see if it's a real person." LVU also deliberately whispered, "There are a lot of people pretending to be celebrities these days. Could it be a fake? Give me your pack of cigarettes. I'll ask old Yen to take a photo for you. He has a wedding photo." The security guard uncle was not convinced. At the same time, he coveted the pack of cigarettes that LVU had just opened. LVU naturally gave it to him. After a while, the security guard uncle came out. He took out his mobile phone and mysteriously pointed to the photo on it and said to LVU, "Look, it's a wedding photo of two people. It's a red background. Can you see if it's that big star?" LVU took the mobile phone. He had already recognized it, but he pretended to take a closer look and looked at it in front of his eyes. It just so happened that someone came to pick up the number. LVU took advantage of the security uncle's inattention and operated the mobile phone. "I'll check the photo of that big star on my mobile phone and compare it." As he spoke, he used his mobile phone to accept the photo via Bluetooth and then deleted the sent record. "How is it? Is it?" the security uncle asked him after he finished his business. "Yes, it really is. Hey, brother, your job is interesting. You can even see a big star get married." LVU was ecstatic. He almost shouted out, but he suppressed it and continued to flatter the security uncle. "Isn't that right?" The security uncle took the mobile phone and put it directly in his pocket. He laughed. "Brother, I have to ask about the policy. I won't talk about it for now." LVU played the whole show and took the initiative to say, "We talked so much today. Why don't you leave your phone number and I'll treat you to a drink after work in the evening. I'll also listen to your story." The security uncle readily agreed and took out his mobile phone and left him his phone number. "Drinking is a must. You're a good kid. You're loyal." Don't think that LVU was fooling the security guard uncle. He really wanted to invite the security guard uncle to drink some wine. First, he secretly thanked the security guard uncle for his help. The harvest of this trip was definitely beyond his imagination. Perhaps, it might be the most he had made in 10 years. Secondly, he also has a bright idea. He plans to develop an informant in the Civil Affairs Bureau. Maybe he can get some news through the security uncle in the future. These are all money. Chapter 398. Their married life was no different from before. Maybe it was because Yang-E and Murphy's cohabitation life was similar to that of a normal married couple? The next day, Murphy went back to work at the company, while Yang-E sent Shi to kindergarten. He then went back to work on Prison Break and The Remaining Sin. The two books were still popular on the internet, but Yang-E had a plan, which was to speed up the release of the remaining drafts so that the two books could be completed as soon as possible. Then, he could put more energy into the Sahara Publishing House. Anyway, as long as he didn't publish his work on other websites, but through the publishing house, he wouldn't violate the contract with Chiyu. To be honest, Yang-E had chosen Chiyu because of its simple structure and quick profits. However, he didn't like to update every day. This kind of work made him feel constrained. Plus, he didn't have many literary works in his mind that were suitable to be published on the internet. Now that he had his own publishing house, Yang-E wanted to publish a book directly. However, Yang-E didn't have time to rest that day. He had just sat down in the coffee shop when Du Yuanlei came looking for him. "Teacher Yang, I'm ready." Du Yuanlei, who was sitting in front of Yang-E, wasn't as haggard as she had been a few days ago. She looked radiant, and even her lips were painted with light lipstick. She looked confident and energetic. Yang-E looked at Du Yuanlei with admiration, then smiled and said, "Then, I'll tell you the general plot of the movie. Listen to it and see if it's suitable." Ludi is a bank robber. His past crimes were all over the place, and he was the main target of police officer Du Jiang. Du Jiang felt that Ludi only knew how to rob banks and nothing else. He didn't believe that Ludi would wash his hands of crime, even though Ludi had been in prison for 5 years and had just been released. Du Yuanlei listened attentively and even made notes in her little notebook. But, in reality, the long prison life had already made Ludi fearful. He had just been released from prison, so he cherished the air of freedom and wanted to live a normal life. But Du Jiang didn't believe him. He even came to pick Ludi up and warned him not to make any more mistakes. Let him be caught. Ludi couldn't be bothered with Du Jiang. He wasn't even willing to explain so much to him. He asked Du Jiang to send him to the bank because he wanted to deposit the money he earned from working in the prison into the bank. But ironically, he encountered a bank robbery in the bank. Yang Yi spoke frankly with assurance, but Du Yuanlei was attracted by his story. A bank robber who had just been released from prison encountered someone else robbing a bank, and then there was a police officer who wanted to arrest him again. No matter how one looked at it, this story would cause a lot of misunderstandings that would make people not know whether to laugh or cry. While Yang Yi was telling stories to others, she was also in kindergarten. She was excitedly telling her friends the story of how her parents had proposed to her over the weekend. My papa played the violin and sang to my mama. Then I took out a box and gave it to my papa, and my mama agreed. Cece's description was very weak, but her friends listened very carefully. Your father can sing? Lon Xian was very envious. She pulled she's little hand and asked, why was it always other people's fathers who were better? Her own father didn't seem to know anything. Yeah, my papa can sing very well. She nodded vigorously, her little face revealing a proud expression. My father didn't propose to my mother. I don't even remember. They seem to have been living together. Nan Xiaoyu frowned. He couldn't understand. Of course he didn't remember. When his parents got married, he wasn't even born yet. She said with concern, Then you have to tell your papa and mom. Boys and girls have to get married before they can live together. Okay then. Nan Xiaoyu nodded with a sad face. He was a little depressed. He actually had a feeling that, my parents weren't good children. My father and my mother got married. My father has a big wedding photo on his bed. Young Luoqi's mind was clear this time. Perhaps her parents had told her a story before. She was still thinking about her own things and didn't answer. My papa and mom even kissed. My papa said that boys and girls can't kiss before they get married. She remembered what her father had told her before and happily shared it with her friends. But my cousin kissed me during the New Year. Chen Shiyun was very confused. No, you can't. She quickly waved her hand and said seriously, Chen Shiyun, you have to tell him that you can't. Nan Xiaoyu, you can't kiss my face either. Lon Xian suddenly snorted and said, My father also said that boys can't kiss me. But when we play house, aren't we parents? Parents can kiss each other. Nan Xiaoyu said with a little grievance. Ahem. Teacher Mu, who had been watching with a smile, couldn't help but come over and pat Nan Xiaoyu's shoulder. She said softly, In fact, she and Xian Air are right. You can't kiss casually. Moreover, you have to remember in the future that if anyone wants to kiss you, whether it's an adult or a child, you have to say to him, No, you have to ask for my father's permission. My papa said the same thing. She jumped and said happily. Okay. Nan Xiaoyu was a little depressed. However, after all, they were children. The topic between them quickly changed. Chen Shiyun said that she and her father went to watch other people's boxing match on the weekend, which attracted the attention of the little guys. After a while, the class began. Today, Teacher Kai taught the children English class. From the beginning of this semester, the children will begin to learn English. However, they don't need to learn how to write English words, nor do they need to learn complicated phonetic symbols. Instead, they need to follow the teacher and learn some pronunciation and the names of common objects. Children, look at this. What is this? Teacher Kai took out a small card. Apple. The children cried in unison. There were also naughty children, such as Chen Shiyun, who raised her arm and laughed mischievously. It's not an apple, it's a big watermelon. Fortunately, everyone was used to it, and Teacher Kai ignored her answer. Yes, apple. In English, it's called apple. Everyone, follow the teacher and say, a plea. Teacher Kai smiled, slowed down, and exaggerated the shape of her mouth. A break. Auntie. Then, all kinds of names began to be called. She, who grew up in the United States, knew some English and could pronounce it correctly. However, the little girl looked at her friends and giggled happily. Her accent also began to be distorted. For example, she also imitated Lon Xian's I poo. The two little girls snuggled up to each other, laughing and swaying left and right. Chapter 399. Yang Yi had already finished introducing the plot of the movie. The whole story sounded a bit like a French style. The jokes were not unreasonable, rigid, or intense. They all came from a normal life. However, the simple contrast and misunderstanding brought about a lot of fun. While it made people laugh, it also had a strong sense of intimacy. As Du Yuanlei listened, she felt that if she were in the movie, she would do the same thing as the characters in the movie. She would have the same experience, and she would show the same jokes. However, what I like more is the humanism shown in this story. For example, the reckless young robber, Wang Li, his real purpose of robbing was to provide for his autistic daughter, Mai, to go to school. He was a kind person, so he took Ludi to the old veterinarian who didn't differentiate between humans and beasts. Du Yuanlei shared her thoughts. Ludi is also a stubborn person. After being touched by Mai, he didn't selfishly leave. Instead, he chose to help Wang Li get out of his predicament. She looked down at her notes and hesitated for a moment before asking, "But, Teacher Yang, isn't this ending a bit too cruel? They have tried their best to get out of this predicament, but in the end, when they were about to achieve freedom, they encountered another bank robbery. You think it's a bit cruel?" Yang Yi felt that Du Yuanlei's judgment was very interesting. Logically speaking, Du Yuanlei had previously written Na Guang to die in her own script. She should be able to understand the artistic effect reflected in this ending. After all, there is a very pitiful little girl here. I feel a little sorry for her. Du Yuanlei was a little sympathetic to the little girl in the story. She sighed and said, "It's better to let them escape the country and live a good life." Actually, the ending of this story is not a hopeless loop. Yang Yi smiled slightly and analyzed for Du Yuanlei. Because if you look carefully, you will understand that letting them be robbed again is not to let them fall into a desperate situation where they can't escape the shackles of fate. Think about it. After Wang Li was kidnapped by the robbers, what would he do? Yang Yi asked. Du Yuanlei's eyes lit up. She thought quickly and immediately said, "He won't associate with the robbers because he's not a real robber." In order to save Wang Li, Rudy might even cooperate with the police and help Wang Li redeem himself. Not only does he no longer have to be a fugitive, but he can also clear Rudy of suspicion. In the future, Wang Li might have to stay in prison for a few more years, but Rudy will take care of Wang Li. After he comes out of prison, the two adults and one child can live a normal life again. Yang Yi said with a smile. But we won't film it. Instead, we'll leave it to the audience so that they can think about it themselves. Du Yuanlei clenched her fists and asked in excitement. That's right. Yang Yi nodded. A good movie can't film the whole story. In other words, no matter how perfect the story is in your heart, you can't tell it perfectly. Regret is the key to the sublimation of the story. After discussing the plot, Du Yuanlei was very interested in Yang Yi's story. She picked up the script that Yang Yi handed to her and prepared to read it carefully. However, before she went back, Du Yuanlei curiously asked Yang Yi, "Teacher Yang, are you going to let your daughter play the role of the little girl, Mai Yi?" Yang Yi froze for a moment. He waved his hand and said, No, you can choose the actors you want. I won't interfere. This movie was actually Yang Yi's favorite, just like Lion, the Hitman. Of course, his favorite was still Lion, the Hitman. Otherwise, as an orphan in his previous life, he wouldn't have used the name of the main character to give himself an English name since he didn't have a real name and only had a code name. Do you think that I tailor-made this role for my daughter? Yang Yi looked at Du Yuanlei and said, Actually, that's not the case. The little girl in this movie is an important supporting role. Her appearance can make the characters of the two adults more mature and make the movie full of warmth. Indeed, this story wasn't made up for Shi. There was a character like Mai Yi in the movie. But I want to choose Shi to play the role of Mai Yi. After thinking about it, I still think that Shi is the most suitable for this role. Du Yuanlei said honestly. She likes to act in movies. She's just like the little girl in the movie. She's very cute and likable. Yang Yi tried his best to defend himself. But the little girl in the movie has a different personality from Shi. She's autistic and doesn't like to talk. But look at my daughter. She's a chatterbox. Yang Yi had indeed thought about whether she was suitable for this role. However, he still didn't want his daughter to enter the entertainment industry so early. This little girl hadn't grown up yet. If she entered the entertainment industry too early, it would affect her physical and mental development. Du Yuanlei couldn't help but laugh when she heard him complain about her daughter. She said, Who said that you have to have the same personality to act in a movie? Acting, isn't it all about the word acting? She's only 4.5 years old. How would she know this? Yang Yi waved his hand. Du Yuanlei really felt that it was unfair for Shi. She said, Don't look down on your daughter. Last time, she made a cameo appearance in our mini-movie, Fairy Tale. She was acting as herself. Then what about the show she performed with you last Christmas? I remember it was called The Tortoise and the Hare, right? She acted as the hare so vividly. I think she has a talent for acting, Du Yuanlei said. Yang Yi frowned. He waved his hand and said, Go and read the script first. We'll talk about the actors later. He used the delaying tactic. He planned to wait for Du Yuanlei to calm down before rejecting her request. Anyway, there were so many child actors. Du Yuanlei couldn't pick them out. Du Yuanlei was a little helpless, but she still listened to Yang Yi's arrangement. Today, Murphy returned to the company in a happy mood. Mo Xiaowan saw her and said sourly, Sister, are you afraid that people don't know that you're married? Look at how happy you are. You've been grinning like a fool the whole day. Murphy reacted and stopped smiling. She patted Mo Xiaojuan's hand and said, Of course not. Didn't you say that you won't tell the company first? Speaking of which, sister, you and brother-in-law registered your marriage, but you didn't announce it to the public. You didn't have a wedding or a honeymoon. Brother-in-law didn't complain at all? Mo Xiaowan asked curiously. Murphy was stunned for a moment. She gently shook her head and said, No, Yang Yi can still understand my current difficulties. Then brother-in-law is really a good man. Mo Xiaowan said with some emotion. Do you know Lu Fengfei? She used to be in the public relations department, but I poached her to work in the studio. She was quite unfortunate in the past. After she got married, she was very busy with work and didn't have much time to accompany her husband. Then, her husband couldn't understand and quarreled at home all day. Later, he even cheated on her. Do you know what Lu Fengfei's husband said after she found out? He said, Do you have the appearance of a woman? You don't care about home and work overtime every few days, leaving him alone at home. You're forcing him to find another woman. Mo Xiaowan said indignantly. Humph, this bitch. She's still reasonable when she cheated on him. If he really can't stand it, then he can divorce her and find another woman. Murphy listened to Mo Xiaojuan's words and suddenly fell silent. She frowned and no one knew what she was thinking. But at this moment, someone knocked on Murphy's office door. Mo Xiaowan went to open the door. It was Niu Meiling's assistant. Sister Ling wants to talk to you about something. Chapter 400. Neo Myling wanted to talk to Murphy about something other than contract renewal. What else could it be? Right now, Mo Xiaowan watched as Neo Myling chatted with Murphy and asked about her work after the Spring Festival. She also asked about the progress of her concert preparations. But in her heart, she was betting with herself, when will we talk about the contract renewal? Murphy, on the other hand, was seriously discussing the concert arrangements with Neo Myling. She suggested, Sister Ling, should we add one or more concerts? For example, Zhongqing. Last month, when we had a signing event there, the fans were still very enthusiastic. Also, Chuan Province's Tianfu. If we only have concerts in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, it would be unfair to the fans in the other cities. Neo Myling was a little embarrassed, but she was experienced and didn't let Murphy see through it. She laughed and said, It's fine. There will always be a chance to see concerts. After you finish these 3 concerts, we'll have 3 more in the next season. The fans in the other cities can also come to Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou to watch. They can also travel to the international metropolises. Don't think that Neo Myling didn't want to earn money. She wanted to earn money too much. Many cities' concert markets were controlled by professional concert planning companies. Other than a few powerful record companies and management companies that could bypass them, other smaller companies would have to work with them if they wanted to book a concert venue in these cities. In this way, the profit that Tian Mei could get would be greatly reduced. Not to mention that most of the income would be given to Mo Fei because of the contract. In addition, the attendance rate in these cities was relatively low, so the ticket sales and ticket prices were often not as good as those in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. Therefore, if Tian Mei held 3 concerts in these cities, they might not be able to make as much money as one concert in Shanghai. In this way, Neo Myling was naturally more willing to hold a few more concerts in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. Mo Fei's thoughts were much simpler. She frowned and said, But, Sister Ling, going to another city to watch a concert is also a lot of extra expenses for them. Then you don't have to watch concerts for now. Which cities are you interested in? I can arrange a few more commercial performances for you. You can meet your fans and let them listen to you sing. Isn't the effect the same? Neo Myling laughed and said unhurriedly. Commercial performances were great. Those brands wouldn't only pay Murphy's expenses, they would also give the management company an extra red packet. Most importantly, Neo Myling could earn a favor in the middle. How can you compare commercial performances to concerts? Murphy still felt that it wasn't right. She was actually quite disgusted by these kinds of performances. However, at this time, Mo Xiaowan pulled Mo Fei and signaled her not to continue arguing with Neo Myling. At this time, Neo Myling finally had the chance to say her real purpose today. Mo Fei, last year, we talked about the contract renewal, but you told Xiaowan that we would talk about it after the album was released. Sister Ling also agreed to it. Now that your album has been released and has achieved good results, Sister Ling is also happy for you. It's just that your contract with Tian Mei is less than 4 months away. Shouldn't we also talk about the contract renewal? Murphy was startled. She actually didn't want to consider renewing the contract at all, but she wasn't ready to lay her cards on the table with Neo Myling. Now that Sister Ling suddenly mentioned it, how should he answer? Should he say it clearly? Murphy's heart was in a mess. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Fortunately, Mo Xiaowan was afraid that she would say it directly, so she rushed to say to Sister Ling, Sister Ling, now that Sister Fei has obtained such results, do you still want Sister Fei to sign an ordinary contract? Of course, Neo Myling wanted Murphy to sign an ordinary contract, but now that the situation was better than her, she wouldn't be so stupid as to make such an impossible request. She smiled, took out a contract from the table, and said, Of course not. I have always attached great importance to an excellent singer like Murphy. Although our Tian Mei is still facing a big problem, no matter how difficult it is, we can't let Murphy suffer. Top contract, we still want to sign a top contract with Murphy. Neo Myling handed the contract over and said with a smile, However, after all, so many years have passed and the market has changed a lot. Some of the terms of our top contract have also changed a little. Sure enough, Nyo Myling still didn't give up. Even if she signed a top contract, she still wanted to deduct some and squeeze out more profit. Mo Xiaowan took the contract and flipped it open. She saw the changes in the ratio of various types of activities. She looked at Nyo Myling with some deep meaning. Sister Ling, if you said that it was just changing the penalty, then I wouldn't say anything. But as for the revenue sharing, it seems that the company's ratio has been raised a little. Mo Xiaowan said to Nyo Myling with a smile. Murphy frowned. She turned her head and whispered in Mo Xiaojuan's ear, "Why are you still talking to Sister Ling about this? Didn't you not consider renewing the contract?" Mo Xiaowan still had a smile on her face. She pretended to talk to Murphy about the contract, but in fact, she only said one word to Murphy, "Drag." Nyo Myling waited for them to finish discussing before gently explaining. She had prepared a lot of excuses. For example, last year's Yi Qing, the A-list male singer who sang Fireworks in the Heart and competed with Murphy's Coming Across the Sea to See You, signed a contract with Starfire Media as a case study to explain the need for her to increase the company's profit sharing. She said a lot of things until she was in tears. It was as if Tian Mei almost couldn't continue. Murphy had already seen through her. Wasn't this still playing the emotional card? Murphy was silent, but Mo Xiaowan was able to deal with it easily. She smiled and said, "Sister Ling, I understand your difficulties, but after all, renewing the contract is a big deal. There are a lot of treaties on it, so we have to talk about them properly. Now is not a good time, because in a few days, Sister Fei will be going to Beijing for her first concert. How about this, we take this contract back and look at it first? If there are any details that need to be considered, we can continue to talk about it later?" Mo Xiaowan used honorifics and respectfully discussed with Nyo Myling. Nyo Myling still smiled gently. Of course, the contract renewal is not something that can be discussed in a short period of time. I understand. As long as Murphy, Xiaowan, you don't have any big opinions, we can talk about it slowly. Don't we still have 4 months? Murphy and Mo Xiaowan left. Nyo Myling, who was still happy just now, finally stopped smiling. Her face was a little gloomy. She was clearly dissatisfied with Murphy and Mo Xiaojuan's attitude just now. Moreover, Nyo Myling also frowned. She secretly felt that something was wrong. She always felt that Murphy's emotions were a little wrong. It was different from her previous positive attitude. Today, she seemed a little unwilling. Could it be that she was disloyal? Nyo Myling began to suspect. Murphy and Mo Xiaowan, who had left her office, were also talking. "Xiaowan, why are you talking about the contract with Sister Ling again today? Didn't we agree that we won't renew the contract with Sister Ling?" Murphy asked in confusion. Mo Xiaowan said helplessly, "That will have to wait until the final showdown. We can't fall out with Tian Mei now. There are still 4 months. I don't know what Sister Ling will do. Right now, we can only pretend to talk to her about the terms and drag it out for as long as possible." Murphy was silent. She felt that something was wrong. Moreover, Mo Xiaowan dragging it out made her feel a little uneasy. However, her mind was in a mess and she didn't know what to do. "Sis, there's another question. You didn't have to argue with Sister Ling about the concert just now." Mo Xiaowan suddenly remembered. She curled her lips and said to Murphy, "You also know that Sister Ling is a person who goes for the money. She won't be able to make much money holding a concert in Jiangqing. Even if you say that the fans are pitiful, she won't be moved." Murphy heard this and her mood fell. She sighed and said, "I know, but I feel that those fans don't have it easy. They even went so far to watch a concert. Anyway, in the future, when you and brother-in-law work in your studio, you can earn money and spend money as you like. You will be free. At that time, you can also hold a few more concerts for your fans in other cities as compensation." Mo Xiaowan comforted her. "You're right. There are only 4 months left." Murphy smiled and nodded happily. Chapter 401. Looking for Yang Yi, Murphy no longer had as many worries as before. When she came back in the afternoon, she directly talked to Yang Yi about today's matter. Then, she said in confusion, Xiaowan said to drag it out and not tell Sister Ling, but I don't think that's good. Although I don't want to continue the contract at all, I can't keep hiding it from Sister Ling. You feel bad? Yang Yi asked with a smile. Yes, even if Sister Ling has become a stranger now, she still helped me a lot in the years when I debuted. She has done me a favor, so I hope we can part on good terms. If I keep dragging it out, won't we be like enemies? Even if we meet in the future, we won't say hello? Murphy said worriedly. In fact, this was an unsolvable situation. Murphy wants to leave, but Niu Meiling definitely won't be willing to leave with this big signboard. When the time comes, a falling out is inevitable. It was just that Mo Fei was still fantasizing about whether there were two other possibilities. If it was Yang Huan, Yang Yi would definitely scold her and say that she can't be too naive. But now that Murphy looked at him pleadingly, Yang Yi's heart softened. He decided to help Murphy think of a way. Got it. If he wanted Murphy and Tian Mei to break up peacefully, then he had to make Niu Meiling take a step back. But he couldn't be stupid enough to throw money to make Niu Meiling happy. He could only find another way. Didn't Zhu Jie pat his chest and say that he has shares in Tian Mei and that Niu Meiling is his relative? If he really has the ability to persuade Niu Meiling to let go of the past and let Murphy leave smoothly, then he might be able to reward him with a song. I have an idea. I can talk to your sister Ling directly, but don't worry, this matter can't be rushed. Yang Yi comforted Murphy. Really? Mo Fei misunderstood what he meant, and she asked in surprise. Can I really tell Sister Ling everything? Well, don't worry, I have a way to make her not care about your parting. Yang Yi was not completely sure, but he had to give Murphy confidence. At worst, he could kidnap Murphy and give her a Zhu Jie who was as popular as Murphy. Wasn't it just 12 songs? With Sister Ling's personality, she should be able to accept such an exchange, right? In the evening, when Shishi returned home, Murphy, who was already in a good mood, helped the little girl untie her school bag and asked with a smile, Shishi, did anything happy happen at school today? They learned English today, Yang Yi interjected. Learning English? Then wouldn't she have an advantage? You can speak so much English now. Murphy asked expectantly. Shishi smiled happily, she waved her hand and said, No, Chi-Chi is also very good, her papa is an English teacher. Tell your mom, what did you learn today? Yang Yi held back his laughter. I learned a pap, Panama, and orange. She did not feel her father's malice, she happily said to her mother. The first two were all strange pronunciations, but the latter two were correct. What's a pap? Murphy was confused. It's apple, he. She grabbed the big apple on the table, twisted her little hand, and gave her mother an example. Apple is obviously a pap. No, it's apple. How could it be a pap? Murphy was almost led astray by the little girl, she could not help but laugh. Haha, in the car, I also pondered for a long time before I figured out what she was talking about. Yang Yi said cheerfully. That's still not right. Shishi, Mom remembers that you used to say this word. Did the kindergarten teacher mispronounce it? Murphy frowned. She began to suspect that the kindergarten teacher misled the children. No, Teacher Kai said apple. Shishi got it right this time, she giggled and said, Then XNR said a pap, it's so fun. Then you can't mispronounce words just because it's fun, and since XINR mispronounced it, you have to help your good friend and teach her how to pronounce it correctly. Murphy educated her. Shishi felt a little unhappy being scolded, she pouted and said, But Teacher Kai already taught her. In the end, Lon Xin still did not learn it. How could this be blamed on Shishi? Yang Yi smiled and mediated for them. All right, it's not a big deal, it's okay if you can't learn it. Anyway, learning English now is just to cultivate a sense of the language. Children are more likely to accept new things, and establish the feeling of speaking this language early. It won't be difficult for them to learn it in the future. As for the accuracy of the pronunciation, it can be slowly corrected after school. Moreover, we will go abroad to play in the future. When we go abroad and face real foreigners, it will be easier to force ourselves to listen and speak in this kind of context than to ponder over it word by word now. Yang Yi patted She's little head and smiled. Papa, where are we going abroad? She's interest was aroused when she heard that they were going abroad. Abroad, there are many places, and everywhere, there are people who look different from us. They may have blonde hair and white skin, or curly hair and black skin, but they are all very interesting people. Yang Yi smiled and explained. I know, Grandpa's place. We are going to Grandpa's place to play. She jumped excitedly and was very excited. However, when talking about this, Murphy remembered the conversation she had with Mo Xiaowan today. In the evening, after she had enough fun and fell asleep, Murphy poked Yang Yi, leaned on his shoulder and asked, Hubby, let me ask you, do you care about my current job? I run outside all day and often have to go on business trips. Yang Yi reached out and held Murphy in his arms, smiled gently and said, Why would I care? I know you are doing it for work. No, you have to tell me the truth. You can't just comfort me. I don't spend much time with you and she sometimes has opinions. What about you? Murphy drew circles on Yang Yi's chest and said a little nervously. Well, to be honest, I still hope that we can spend more time together. For example, you, she and I can take some time to travel together and see the great mountains and rivers of our motherland. Or go abroad to play, to see the canton of Venice, to see the Seine River. Even Mo Fei herself was a little confused. She murmured, I actually like traveling very much, but most of the time, I can't help myself. When I was pregnant, I went to Europe for a few days. But after so many years, this is the only trip I've taken. Hubby, I know I'm not doing well right now. Can you give me some time? Murphy propped herself up and looked at Yang Yi. She said sincerely, Give me a few more months to fulfill the responsibilities of this contract for Sister Ling, then I will come to our studio and no longer participate in those commercial performances and announcements. I will only release songs and hold concerts. The rest of the time, I will accompany you and she, and then we can go on a trip together. Why are you so silly and cute? I already said I didn't care. Yang Yi laughed. He reached out and pinched Murphy's nose and said, Don't give yourself so much pressure. I'm actually very happy to see you at night. But I think you care. Murphy muttered vaguely, I'm also afraid that you will find another woman. Murphy was frightened by Mo Xiaojuan's story. Before she and Yang Yi were together, she was a person with a very low sense of security. Of course, now she knew what kind of person Yang Yi was. If he really liked to cheat, he wouldn't have clearly distanced himself from the flower shop owner. What did you say? Yang Yi didn't hear clearly. Nothing. Murphy stuck out her tongue and smiled mischievously. I know what to do. No, what did you just say? Yang Yi was a little curious. No, I said I love you. Murphy giggled, lying on Yang Yi's chest and looking up at him. Yang Yi was immediately attracted by her cuteness. He rubbed Murphy's head and smiled. I love you too. Chapter 402. Regarding Murphy's matter, Yang Yi still prioritized it and contacted Zhu Jie. However, Zhu Jie went diving with his family in Australia during Chinese New Year, and he was still eating lobsters. Although he received a message from Yang Yi that he would return as soon as possible, it was still a long journey, and it would take him a few days to book a flight. Before waiting for Zhu Jie to return, Yang Yi first went to see the lawyer, Hua Yang, recommended by Lanzhao Kai, regarding Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan's matter. Hua Yang opened his own law firm and partnered with several practicing lawyers. He was indeed a famous lawyer. Many people came to see him because of his reputation. His front door was as busy as a marketplace. However, Hua Yang would leave the general defense cases to his partners, while he would pick some difficult cases, such as Yang Yi's case, and personally go into battle. Mainly, it has to be challenging and interesting. Hua Yang smiled at Yang Yi as he continued, otherwise, how boring would it be to fight trivial cases of divorce? Hua Yang's age was roughly in his 30s. Although Yang Yi could tell that he wasn't obsessed with cleanliness, he paid great attention to his image, and even his dressing was meticulous. His skinny face was so clean that it looked like he had applied BB cream. He had a meticulously trimmed mustache and a small stubble on his chin. Not only did he not look sloppy, but he also had a unique style. His hair was also meticulously combed and styled with gel, making him look spirited. Hua Yang wore a black woolen windbreaker that wasn't cheap, and his rimless spectacles left a deep impression on others. They complemented his eyes and enhanced his temperament. Then again, he would definitely be a villain in other novels if he was dressed so handsomely. But here, he was just a lawyer with a brilliant record. Then, what do you think about this case? Can it be successfully terminated? Yang Yi didn't care about anything else and asked straightforwardly. Hua Yang probably sensed that Yang Yi wasn't the kind of person who liked to chat, so he didn't say anything else. He put away his previous formulaic smile and only left a trace of a smile. Right now, I have too little information on my side. I only know some of the person's experience from you. This is not enough to determine whether or not the contract can be terminated. However, based on the past, including the entertainment lawsuits that other lawyers have fought, I can tell you that the entertainment industry's contracts are more or less problematic. Entertainment management companies often exploit loopholes in the law and take advantage of the fact that new actors and singers are not familiar with the law to set up traps in their contracts for personal gain. Yang Yi listened to him quietly. Due to the scale of the entertainment industry's development, our country's judicial authorities also attach great importance to it. 2 years ago, new laws and regulations were introduced for all aspects of the entertainment industry. If there are still some unilateral traps in the contract, then the contract can be ruled invalid. Yang Yi understood and asked, "You want to see their contract?" "Not only that, I also need to talk to the two parties and understand the objective process of the whole incident from them," Hua Yang said. "Perhaps there will be some evidence collection work that needs their cooperation." Yang Yi nodded. "That's not a problem. I'll tell them later and ask them to come to you." The first meeting with lawyer Hua Yang lasted less than an hour. It was concise and comprehensive. After talking about the matter, Yang Yi left. It couldn't be helped. They charged by the hour. Although Yang Yi didn't care about the money, he had spent 3,000 yuan just to talk for less than an hour. Moreover, this was only the consultation fee. The legal fees for the lawsuit would be calculated separately. Thinking of this, Yang Yi couldn't help but shake his head. He thought to himself, what a scam. So be it. As long as he could solve the contract problems between Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan, Yang Yi didn't care about the small amount of money he spent. Yang Yi had already returned. However, Yang Yi didn't let her help in the coffee shop every day like last year. Instead, he helped her sign up for a pre-exam training class so that she could focus on preparing for the art exam that was coming in a few months. Recently, Ding Xiang had also started learning how to drive. Yang Yi enrolled her in a driving school, starting from the theoretical knowledge. For the past 2 days, she had been nervously studying the question bank for Subject 1, as if she was preparing for the college entrance examination. Fortunately, Ding Xiang was only reading now. She didn't leave her job in the coffee shop. Otherwise, Yang Yi, the boss, would have to put on his uniform again. One day, Lin Mu came over with an embarrassed face. He raised his hand with teeth marks and asked, "Boss, why do your cats like to bite people these days? Aren't they usually very obedient?" Lin Mu liked cats. Sometimes, Yang Yi would bring the 3 British Shorthairs down. He would always play with them for a while. Although the cat owners often ignored him, he still chased after them enthusiastically and helped them stroke their fur. Usually, Ding Xiang would not help to take care of the 3 kittens for the sake of food hygiene. Now that Lin Mu liked to play with them, Yang Yi was happy to see it. "Bite people?" Yang Yi asked in surprise. "Did you provoke them?" "How could that be? I'm very nice to them." Lin Mu complained. He even lifted his leg to show Yang Yi his trouser leg. "Look, my trouser leg is almost torn by them." Saying this, Yang Yi remembered that Little Gray and Dao Dao had been a little irritated these past few days, especially Little Gray, who had been biting everywhere. They should be growing out their teeth soon, right? A customer next to them overheard their conversation and said with a smile, "Your 3 cats, looking at their age, are about to grow out their teeth. During this period, it's normal for them to be a little anxious. Do you want to take them to the vet to get their teeth out?" Lin Mu, and was still very concerned about the 3 cats. Although they had been bitten, he still helped them ask. Yang Yi was reminded by the customer and remembered the cat rearing book he had read before. He had an answer in his heart. However, the customer answered first. He could not help but laugh. How could that be? It's just like when people grow out their teeth. In fact, they fall out naturally, and then new teeth grow out. It's just that it's a little difficult during this period. I have to buy them teeth-grinding sticks. Yang Yi smiled slightly. The customer looked at Yang Yi, nodded and said, "Yes, buy the kind of catnip. That teeth-grinding stick cat likes it the most." "Right. Have your 3 British Shorthairs been sterilized?" The customer was obviously also a poop picker. He was very interested in talking about cats. "They don't need to be sterilized, right?" Yang Yi hesitated and said. He had heard about this a long time ago, but Yang Yi was not very willing, because he felt that sterilizing cats was like asking a person to be a eunuch. It was a little cruel. "Yes, of course. It's necessary to sterilize cats because your cats are about to go into estrus. When cats go into estrus, the possibility of pregnancy is almost 100%. Then they will give birth to a litter of at least 3 to 5 cats in their lifetime. If there are more and more cats, you will definitely not be able to raise them. If you let them wander the streets and become stray cats, I think you can't bear it," the customer advised Yang Yi. "Then when they go into estrus, you can control them. Don't let them run out of the door, and don't let them gather together." "Is that okay?" Yang Yi asked. "If cats go into estrus and don't mate, it's not good for their bodies. Male cats are fine. At most, they will pee everywhere, and then the whole house will be filled with a strong cat smell. Female cats are miserable. They don't mate when they go into estrus. Over time, they will get sick, and finally die of genital diseases." Yang Yi didn't know where he got this knowledge from, but anyway, his words made Yang Yi's hair stand on end. Not to mention the cat smell, Yang Yi thought of a bunch of kittens in his house every few months, and he had a headache. "It seems that I can only let you guys do a surgery." Yang Yi looked at Xiao Guai and said in his heart. The 3 kittens didn't feel that their doom was coming. They were still playing and chasing each other without any worries. Chapter 403. With Mu Yuqing's personality, he did not like shopping. Now that he was a department manager, his work was getting busier and he did not have much time to go out. Even if he could take a few days off after completing a project, Mu Yuqing would rather stay at home and sleep. Fortunately, shopping websites were on the rise now, and many things could be bought directly online. Mu Yuqing had even more reason to stay at home. For example, today, Mu Yuqing saw that his slippers were broken. Although they could still be worn, they were a little leaky and uncomfortable. If it was this time last year, he would have gone downstairs to the nearby supermarket to buy a pair. Now, Mu Yuqing subconsciously opened his computer and prepared to place an order on Sahara Online Mall. Shopping websites were very popular this year. Under the pursuit of venture capital, all kinds of shopping websites popped up one after another. Advertisements on TV were also bombarded non-stop. However, Mu Yuqing was set on Sahara Online Mall when it came to online shopping. As a senior in the IT industry, Mu Yuqing also studied other shopping websites out of curiosity. However, those websites were mixed. Not only was the operation interface confusing, but the service level was also incomparable to Sahara Online Mall. When it came to online shopping, except for homebuddies like Mu Yuqing, most people were still going for the cheap prices. Therefore, if they wanted to compete with Sahara Online Mall, most shopping websites had to invest their energy in price wars. They did not even have the time and money to build a complete customer service team. Most of the time, they could not even find anyone to ask at night. However, even if it was a price war, it still required capital support. Websites with venture capital might be able to last for a while, but websites without venture capital could only walk a tightrope and use some underhanded methods. Therefore, Mu Yuqing saw that many inferior shopping websites had cheap products, but the quality of the products was not guaranteed. Many netizens who bought the products questioned whether the website was selling fake products. Sahara Online Mall was still the best. An old brand, good quality, cheap, and trustworthy. Moreover, Mu Yuqing admired Sahara Online Mall's logistics. He lived in Guangzhou, and basically, the things he bought would arrive the next day if it was close to the source. For the goods that were far away, it would be delivered in 2 or 3 days. Mu Yuqing felt that Sahara Online Mall was on the right track to invest in improving the user experience. However, when Mu Yuqing logged on to Sahara Online Mall's website today, a new banner advertisement attracted his attention. It was a very simple advertising slogan: Yang Yi's new book is on sale. Yang Yi's name alone was enough to attract Mu Yuqing's attention. As a die-hard fan of Yang Yi, Mu Yuqing was still bitterly watching Prison Break and Yu Zue every day. Now that he saw that Yang Yi had released a new book, how could he not check it out? It really was Yang Yi. The newly opened interface gave a full introduction of the author. Yang Yi, a new writer. Since his debut a year ago, he has successively written Drawing Sword, Assault of Soldiers, Yu Zue, Prison Break, and Shi's Bedtime Stories. His works span the fields of military, crime, fairy tales, and so on. He is extremely good at character portrayal and plot structure. His works rely on bold ideas and fascinating stories to make readers unable to put them down. Mu Yuqing did not even need to look at these introductions. He already knew what to expect. He had basically collected all of Yang Yi's books. Even Prison Break, which had just sold the first and second volumes of physical books, was already on the bookshelf. What he was curious about was what Yang Yi's new book was. It was still a pre-sale, but the name of the book had already been given. Walk in the White Night. What kind of name was that? Mu Yuqing was a little confused. Day was day, night was night. What did Walk in the White Night mean? Or was someone called Walk in the White Night? Just like Yu Zue, Yang Yi directly used the name of the protagonist to give the book a meaningful name? However, he soon found the answer in the 2 pictures below. The pre-sale page showed the cover and back pages of Walk in the White Night. The cover was very simple. It was a black silhouette of 2 children, a man and a woman. It seemed like there was a projection. The 2 silhouettes also refracted 2 enlarged versions of the gray projection. The back page was also simple. Other than some pricing, barcodes, the publisher's logo, and a reduced version of the gray projection, there was a paragraph of text. There is no sun in my sky. It is always night, but it is not dark because there is something replacing the sun. Although it is not as bright as the sun, it is enough for me. With this light, I can see night as day. I have never had a son, so I am not afraid of losing it. This was a seemingly heartwarming paragraph, but when Mu Yuqing read it, he could not help but have some goosebumps. It was a little creepy. For some reason, Mu Yuqing had such a feeling. This work seemed to be different from Yang Yi's previous books. In the past, even if Yang Yi's books were evil, they made people feel warm and happy when they read them. However, this book, which he had not read, made Mu Yuqing feel warm just based on this sentence. What kind of work was it? Mu Yuqing looked at the editor's note below. Yang Yi is a very imaginative and creative author. He has never been stubborn with a single theme. Now, he is once again trying a new field and releasing his first mystery novel. Unlike his previous works, Yang Yi's Journey by White Night deeply dissects the evil of human nature and the controversial kindness on the other end of the evil. As the title of Journey by White Night describes, the protagonist searches for the light in the darkness. Seemingly unrelated stories interweave into a suffocating network, displaying the color of mystery to the fullest. Perhaps the whole book is as cold and dark as the night, but I want to say that this is a novel about love. That is the only warmth and light. So mysterious. It reflected the feelings of two extremes, but it was also like those horror movies. The scarier it was, the more fascinating it was. Moreover, the analysis of human nature mentioned in the editor's note was also part of Mu Yuqing's interest. He felt that this book was becoming more and more interesting, and he wanted to read it more and more. Buy it. What are you waiting for? It's rare that Boss Yang Yi has a novel that doesn't need to wait for an update to be released. Mu Yuqing, like many other fans who heard the news, excitedly clicked "Buy it now," and couldn't wait to pay. He still had to wait until March, but Mu Yuqing was already full of anticipation. Murphy went to Beijing in advance to prepare for the first concert. However, on this day, Yang Yi received a text message from the kindergarten teacher, saying that the kindergarten would organize a parent-child spring outing on the weekend. Parents were encouraged to participate. Yang Yi naturally had to go. Although it was only climbing the not-so-tall Pavilion Mountain, Yang Yi felt that it would be very interesting to participate in activities with his daughter. Almost at the same time, Jian Chua knocked on Niu Meiling's office door. She said to Niu Meiling with a strange expression, "Sister Ling, I received an email from that person again. It's quite troublesome. Do you want to take a look?" "Who?" Niu Meiling didn't understand. "It's the paparazzi who took photos of Zhen Zhen causing trouble after drinking. His nickname is Teacher Mouth." Jian Chua used her own artist as an example and hinted with a conflicted expression. Niu Meiling frowned. "What trouble did Zhen Zhen cause this time? Didn't I tell you to tell her to be more honest and not let the company clean up her mess all day long? It's really not Zhen Zhen's fault this time. The thing that they want to sell is not Zhen Zhen's." Jian Chua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Then whose is it?" Chapter 404. After a while, Niu Meiling and Jian Chua looked at the photo sent by Teacher Ko in the email. They looked at the photo of Murphy and a tall man walking out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, hand in hand. After a while, Niu Meiling frowned and pointed to Yang Yi's face in the photo and said, "Who is this man?" Jian Chua shook her head and said, "I don't know. The little girl in his arms should be Murphy's daughter, Shi. Do I need you to introduce me?" Niu Meiling rolled her eyes. "Sister Ling, is this man Murphy's man? It seems that he is very close to Shi. But didn't you say that the father of her child has passed away?" Jian Chua asked doubtfully. "I made that up. I asked Murphy, but she refused to say who the father of the child was. It was as if she had been deceived and had given up on that man. If I don't make up a reason, what if you guys make wild guesses and spread it out as gossip?" Niu Meiling said casually, staring at Yang Yi in the photo. In the photo, the man and Murphy were holding hands and looking at each other. The sweetness in their eyes could be written, so it was impossible to explain with a driver. Moreover, when Murphy was with that man, she looked like a little bird, which made Niu Meiling a little jealous. She felt like her own daughter was being taken away by someone else. At this time, Jian Chua asked, "Hey, Sister Ling, what do you think they are doing at the Civil Affairs Bureau?" At this time, Jian Chua also paused. Niu Meiling and she looked at each other and suddenly revealed a tacit understanding. "Do you still need to ask this question? What else can a pair of lovers do at the Civil Affairs Bureau?" Niu Meiling was relatively calm. She directed Jian Chua, "Send an email back in my name and ask him what he means." Lu Yu, Teacher Ko, replied quickly, as if he had been waiting in front of the computer. "Sister Ling, he told us to name a price." Jian Chua turned around and sighed. In fact, when Jian Chua sent the email, she already knew how the other party would respond. It was exactly the same as after Zhan Muqian's accident. If they were worried that the photos would be exposed, they would have to buy them back. Of course, they had learned from their peers that this extorting teacher was quite famous in the industry. His reputation was quite good. Generally, if you paid him, you wouldn't have to worry about your photos being exposed. Teacher Ko was a man of his word. Niu Meiling ignored Jian Chua. She frowned and looked at the new photo that was sent to her via email. Compared to the previous screenshots, this photo was a little blurry, as if it had been taken by a phone with poor pixels. It was a photo with a red background. Murphy and the man's smiling faces were printed in the photo. It was obvious. What a daredevil. He secretly went to get married and was even secretly photographed. Even his wedding photos have been dug out. Didn't he sign a confidentiality agreement with the Civil Affairs Bureau? Nyo Myling couldn't help but curse in her heart. She didn't know that Murphy had signed a confidentiality agreement with the Civil Affairs Bureau. None of the photos taken with the officials inside were leaked. And Murphy's wedding photos were actually tricked by the resourceful Lu Yu. How is it? Do you want to ask Murphy? Jen Chua asked in a low voice. Nyo Myling shook her head gently and said, "The result is the same. In the end, we still have to clean up her mess. Don't say it first, so as not to affect her concert. You can talk to Teacher Ko and buy the photos. Now that Murphy's career is on the rise, we can't expose her marriage and having a child. The impact will be too great." Of course, this was not Nyo Myling's real idea. She didn't want to talk to Murphy about this now, mainly because she didn't want to affect her contract renewal with Murphy. Secondly, Nyo Myling also wanted to wait for Murphy to sign the contract renewal before she settled the account with Murphy. The money to clean up her mess had to be deducted from Murphy's share. If she said it now, wouldn't the company have to help her pay for the photos to show generosity and care? Nyo Myling had also thought of another possibility. For example, she simply did not pay, and let Teacher Ko expose this photo to the public, which would suppress Mo Fei's reputation, and then she would not need to renew the contract with Mo Fei. Anyway, with so many classic songs, after a period of trouble, under the company's public relations operation, Murphy could still restore her fame. After all, she was now a strong singer, not an idle singer who would have a tragedy after marriage. But Nyo Myling couldn't do this, because after this news was exposed, the fact that she knew about it but didn't do anything could not be covered up. If the teacher was also exposed, it would affect her image and her relationship with Mo Fei, which would bring a lot of trouble to the contract renewal. At that time, Murphy wouldn't renew the contract, and Tian Mei would lose even more. The risk was too great. 2 days later, Jen Chua and Teacher Ko reached an agreement. Tian Mei paid 500,000 yuan to buy all the information, videos, and photos about Murphy's matter. LVU was a smart person. He knew that if he was forced, Tian Mei and Murphy might directly disclose it, so he didn't ask for too much. At a price acceptable to both parties, he packaged the information and sold it to Murphy's agency. "Sister Ling is really loyal. It's a pleasure to deal with you. Don't worry, I'll send the information to you. I'll clear the hard drive here and not leave any traces. See you in the future." After LVU confirmed the receipt of the money, he sent the email. After Jen Chua received the email, she opened it and showed it to Nyo Myling. "Sister Ling, what do we do next?" Jen Chua stood aside and looked at Nyo Myling. Nyo Myling took out a USB and copied the email and information into the USB. Then, she used a tool to crush the original document on Jen Chua's computer. "Forget about this matter. Just pretend it never happened." Nyo Myling stood up and looked at Jen Chua lightly. Jen Chua froze for a moment, then she nodded cleverly. Nyo Myling took the USB back to her office, sat in the boss chair, and played with it for a while. However, her gaze wasn't on the USB. Instead, she frowned slightly and looked into the void, thinking about something. Suddenly, she muttered a few words. "You're married, but you don't even tell Sister Ling Murphy you've changed." For some reason, Nyo Myling's eyes revealed a trace of loneliness. However, this emotion flashed by, and she quickly became as determined as usual. She opened the safe and put the USB in. "I hope you haven't really changed your heart." The safe closed with a bang. That night, Murphy's Jixin interview was broadcast on Shanghai TV. On the screen, when Murphy faced Luo Xian's words, "Mu Ziang is the man who understands you the best," she didn't deny it. Moreover, the corner of her mouth revealed a smile, which was seen by many viewers. At that time, under Murphy's micro-broadcasting and Mo Xiaojuan's broadcast notice, the netizens expressed their shock and speculations. Wow, is this a hint? Could it be a publicity stunt? Didn't you say that it was impossible between you and Mu Ziyang? Liar. I remember that the music came on quickly, and you even said that Mu Ziyang only sang for you because he liked your song. How did it become that he understands you? It shouldn't be a publicity stunt. Now that the results are so good, is there still a need for publicity? Can't you use your brain? I support Murphy and Mu Ziyang as a couple. One is the best at singing, the other is the best at writing songs. They'll be so beautiful together. Hee. I also support Chen Yijie and Mu Ziyang as a couple. Chen Yijie is also the best at singing. Don't be jealous, okay? I don't care who Murphy is with. Anyway, I like Murphy's songs. Same, but I do like Murphy and Mu Ziyang together. They're so compatible. If they're together, they can give us more songs like Listen to the Sea. Just as the micro-broadcasting was arguing, an international flight slowly stopped at Shanghai Hongqiao International Airport. Zhu Jie had a big-eyed frog pillow around his neck. He was dressed casually but looked handsome. He excitedly pushed his suitcase to the exit. Uncle Mu Ziyang actually came to me for help. Haha, Zhu Jie's chance to be famous again is here. He had a good sleep on the plane, and now he was full of energy at night. He was so excited that he couldn't help but dance around his suitcase. He had specially practiced this for the variety show. However, he was a little carried away and forgot that he was still in public. His crazy dance attracted a lot of attention. Wow, isn't that Zhu Jie? Zhu Jie, give me your autograph. Several professional fans who were waiting for celebrities at Hongqiao rushed up excitedly. Zhu Jie was dumbfounded, but he reacted quickly. He quickly put away his cheeky smile and put on a cool expression. Are you my fans? You want my autograph? Okay. Zhu Jie, you're so handsome. Zhu Jie, I really like your songs. Every word of flattery almost made Zhu Jie to heaven. Chapter 405. After Mo Fei's show was broadcasted, it caused a lot of waves. The media report the next day caught Tianmei's public relations department a little off guard. They didn't get any notice from Mo Fei and Mo Xiaowan at all, so they didn't know that she would make such a mess. But from Murphy's side, they only received a vague response. There's no such thing. It's just a misunderstanding. There's no need to clarify. Since it was a misunderstanding, why wasn't there a need to clarify? The manager of the public relations department was about to curse. However, things didn't seem to be as bad as they thought. Things didn't get out of hand because of the scandal. Now that micro-broadcasting was emerging, more and more celebrities had opened their own verified accounts. People in the entertainment industry also gradually realized the importance of micro-broadcasting as a bridge between celebrities and their fans. The public relations department would also collect feedback from the fans through micro-broadcasting. However, the feedback they received from this incident left them scratching their heads. Although there were still some fans who expressed that they could not stand the scandal, most of the fans unexpectedly chose to support Murphy and Mu Ziyang as a couple. What was going on? The world was developing too fast. Were they unable to keep up with the pace? The public relations department thought for a long time and could only reluctantly explain that the fans liked Murphy, so they liked Murphy's songs, and so they also liked to write Murphy's songs. Since the fans did not cause a ruckus and Murphy did not have any objections, they might as well let the fans continue to support Murphy and Mu Ziyang as a couple. People in the entertainment industry did not think that a couple would necessarily have any connection to a real relationship. This was just another way to create hype. Since the fans were happy, then let them play and create hype for free. Why not? When Murphy called Yang Yi, she even treated the news about Murphy as a joke and told Yang Yi about it. She even said happily, "Look, my fans are very supportive of us being together." Yang Yi was also very happy. These two fellows only treated this matter as a small prank. Not only did they not care at all, but they also felt that it was very amusing. Yang Yi couldn't go to Murphy's first concert in Beijing. He was going to participate in the parent-child spring outing organized by the kindergarten with Shi. He could only wait until the second concert was held in Shanghai next month. For the sake of this parent-child spring outing, he had even postponed his meeting with Ju Jie. "Papa, hurry up, hurry up. It's too late." The little girl wore pink sneakers and ran into the living room. Then, she turned around and called out anxiously a few times, as if she was on fire. "Don't worry. Daddy will drive. We won't be late. Here, put on another coat." Yang Yi was just rummaging through the clothes in the wardrobe when he turned around and couldn't see the little fellow. He had to take Shi's windbreaker and chase after her. "Don't wear it. It's so hot." She quickly reached out to block it. She pouted her small mouth and said reluctantly. She wore two undergarments, a red knitted wool dress, and a thick pair of trousers under the skirt. Although there was still some spring cold in Jiang City, such a dress was enough to keep her warm. "No, later, we will climb the mountain. It will be cold on the mountain. It will be colder than home and kindergarten, just like winter," Yang Yi explained to his daughter. He still had a down jacket in his backpack for the little girl. If she could persist in climbing to the top of the mountain, it might come in handy. She threw a little tantrum, but she was still very obedient. Seeing her father insist, she obediently stretched out her small arms and said with a little grievance, "Okay, but it won't be beautiful." It turned out that she was still a narcissistic little girl. Yang Yi smiled and patted Shi's little head. He said, "Who said that beauty can only be reflected in pretty clothes? If you can grit your teeth and persist in climbing Ting Mountain today with me and climb to the top, then you will also be the most beautiful little girl. Hard-working, brave, and strong children are the most beautiful. Everyone will give you a thumbs up and tell you, 'Shi, you are awesome.'" Really? She really believed him. She looked at her father with sparkling eyes, looking forward to the future. Today, everyone gathered at the foot of Ting Mountain. Although Yang Yi and she didn't set off early, he was still on time, neither early nor late. He belonged to the group in the middle. And behind him, not long after, Yang Yi saw Lan Hao Kai, dressed like a professional mountaineer, holding Lan Xian's hand as they alighted from the car. Yang Yi smiled and said, "Boss Lan, how come you have time to climb the mountain with Xian Air?" "Uncle Yang." Before Lan Hao Kai could answer, Lan Xian broke free of his hand and shouted loudly, throwing herself at him happily. "Hey, Xian Air, how are you?" Yang Yi quickly bent down to catch her. Lan Xian and Yang Yi were getting closer and closer. The moment she came up, she planted a kiss on Yang Yi's cheek, making her father jealous. But she still had a purpose. After the kiss, she asked impatiently, "Uncle Yang, did you bring me anything good to eat?" Yes. Look, Uncle is carrying such a big bag. It's all to bring you something good to eat." Yang Yi smiled and said, "But, you have to climb the mountain first to eat." "Not now." At this time, she was a little dissatisfied. The wind was strong in the mountain, and Yang Yi even put a windbreaker hat on her. She was like a little puppet, her arms stiff as she jumped to the side and called out in a crisp voice, "Air, you haven't even said hello to me." Shi, I didn't forget you." Lan Xian got the answer she wanted, and stopped clinging to Yang Yi. She giggled as she came down and held Shi's hand. The two girls gathered together again and chatted away. At this time, Lan Hao Kai had a chance to interject. He coolly flipped his fisherman's hat and said, "How can I not participate in a parent-child activity? Today, we are going to climb the 5 peaks of Pavilion Mountain. It's 600 meters high." Yang Yi smiled and looked at Lan Hao Kai. For Yang Yi, climbing the 600 meters high peak was as easy as eating and drinking. But for the fat Lan Hao Kai and these cute little kids, it could be said that it was not a small challenge. "Oh, you underestimate me?" Lan Hao Kai raised the hiking stick in his hand and proudly said, "See, This hiking stick is a prize I won in a mountaineering activity held by my company. Let me tell you, not to mention the 5 peaks, I have even climbed the main peak. Okay, I believe you. Later, we will take the children and climb up together, okay? Let them exercise. Yang Yi smiled and patted Lanzhao Kai's shoulder. Not long after, the other children and their parents also came. Today's parent-child activity was mountaineering, so basically, the parents came. Chen Shiyun was brought by her father, Chen Guoqiang, and Yang Luoqi was brought by her father, Yang Guo. They either carried light luggage or a backpack with water and clothes. Only Yang Yi carried a big hiking backpack. Who asked him to bring food for the children. When he came, almost all the children who had a bit of courage ran up to him and asked if he brought any delicious food. Even the little girl, Yang Luoqi, timidly asked, "Uncle Yang, can I have lunch with you and Shishi? I like your cooking." However, today, among Shishi's little friends, there seemed to be one person missing. Where's Nan Xiaoyu? Yang Yi found that the little boy who made him somewhat wary was not there, so he curiously asked. Chapter 406. That's right, where did Nan Xiaoyu go? The little girls who were excitedly gathered together and whispered only now discovered this problem. Then Yang Yi saw that first Shi, then Yang Luoqi, then Lan Xian, Chen Shiyun, one by one, raised their small heads and looked at him in confusion. What Yang Yi found strange was that Mr. Shen, who was in charge of the roll call, had said that everyone was here. So he went over to ask, and then came back hesitantly. Ahem, we don't have to wait for Nan Xiaoyu. He has something to do at home, so he can't come. Let's go. Yang Yi briefly explained to the little ones. Nan Xiaoyu ran away. He's a deserter. Chen Shiyun shouted. Xiaoyu said he would climb the mountain with us. Shi pouted and said unhappily. Yang Yi wanted to say something, but stopped. The news that Mr. Shan had just told him was not as simple as that. Lanzhao Kai saw it. He raised his eyebrows and noticed that something was wrong. He came over and asked, "What happened?" Yang Yi lowered his voice and said, Nan Yun suddenly had a cerebral infarction last night. He's still in the hospital. His whole family is in the hospital now. Yang Yi didn't want to tell the children this bad news. It would ruin their good mood today. Lanzhao Kai was shocked. He also lowered his voice and said, "No way? What's the situation now?" Lanzhao Kai had a good impression of Nan Yun. When they first met, it was at a party at Yang Yi's house. Nan Yun's grandfather was playing a classical song in front of the piano. Although he was a little old, he looked very energetic. How could he suddenly have a cerebral infarction? Fortunately, Mr. Shan said that he has been rescued and regained consciousness, but... Yang Yi sighed. You just haven't recovered yet, right? Lanzhao Kai seemed to understand the situation very well. He shook his head and said, "It's normal. If he's conscious, it means that he has a mild cerebral infarction. If he doesn't wake up for a long time, it will be really troublesome. But even if it's mild, he'll have to lie in bed for 10 days to half a month. He might not be able to recover completely. It depends on his luck." Yang Yi looked at him in surprise. Lanzhao Kai sighed. You think it's amazing that I know so much, right? Xian Air's grandfather passed away because of cerebral infarction. Yang Yi understood. He gently patted Lanzhao Kai's shoulder. Lanzhao Kai smiled. Don't worry, it's been many years. We'll talk about Nan Yun's situation after we finish climbing the mountain. Tonight, if there's nothing else, let's go visit him together. What do you think? I think it's okay. Yang Yi nodded. Nan Xiaoyu's father's experience was put aside for the time being. The activity began. Yang Yi led the little ones along the repaired mountain stairs. Ignorance was bliss. The little ones didn't know what happened to their friends' families yet. They were still very happy, chattering while climbing the mountain. At the beginning, they were still full of energy. I've been here with my dad. Chen Shuyun trotted to the front and wanted to walk backward, but she was stopped by her father. She had to return to the team with a pout. I've been here with my papa, too. We even made barbecue. She remembered the scene last year, and she happily shared it with her friends. My mom also went, and then we played in the river. Ahem, it's just a stream. If it's a big river, Dad can't let you go into the water. Yang-yi, who was walking behind, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She blinked her big cute eyes, glanced at her father, and then turned her head to look at her friends. But I want to eat barbecue. Lon Xian, who had climbed the mountain for a while, was already a little out of breath, but she still shouted excitedly. I want to eat barbecue too. Chen Shuyun also shouted. Not today. Uncle didn't bring barbecue tools today, only some snacks for you. Yang-yi told them a cruel reality. Ah, no barbecue. Lon Xian was disappointed. My papa made a delicious cake. Xian, don't be sad. It's really delicious. She considerately held Lon Xian's hand and comforted her. I still want to eat barbecue. Chen Shuyun continued to shout. Her temper was even worse than Lon Xian's. Chen Shuyun, you can't. Your Uncle Yang said no, so he didn't. You're still shouting. You're causing trouble. Chen Guoqiang glared and scolded. I want to eat barbecue. However, Chen Shuyun was stubborn. She pouted and shouted at her father, then turned her head angrily. You. Chen Guoqiang was furious. He was a boxing coach, so he was used to the feeling of being straightforward on the boxing stage. How could he hold back his anger? If they were not outside, he would have picked up his disobedient daughter and beat her. Fortunately, Yang-yi stopped him and said with a smile, Brother Chen, don't worry. That's not causing trouble. Besides, the child is not sensible. You have to reason with her slowly. Shuyun, it's not that Uncle doesn't want to make barbecue for you today, but it's really inconvenient. You see, we're going to climb the mountain. The wind is so strong that we can't make a fire and barbecue, right? Yang-yi patiently explained to Chen Shuyun. Chen Shuyun was respected. Although the little girl still could not understand the logic, her mood was much better, and she did not have the same stubborn expression as before. However, perhaps she was still angry about her father's scolding, so she still looked unhappy. My daughter is still the best. Obedient and sensible. Yang-yi looked at Shi, who was looking at her friends worriedly, and thought to himself. However, Lan Cao Kai waved his hand generously and said, What's the big deal about barbecue? We'll climb the mountain, and after we go down, Uncle will take you to eat barbecue in a big hotel. Wow! Barbecue in a big hotel. All of a sudden, the four girls cried out in surprise. Chen Shuyun forgot to be angry with her father, and even Cici jumped around the fat uncle happily with her friends. Lan Cao Kai, a billionaire who was always calm in the face of trouble, laughed happily like a child at this moment. He even looked at Yang-yi proudly, as if to say, Look, I'm more popular than you. Yang-yi did not know whether to laugh or cry. He wanted to say, Here, except for my daughter, I'll give you everything. However, it was too early for them to be happy. Climbing the mountain was not that easy. After walking for a few kilometers, not only the children, but even the adults began to pant, let alone talk. Yang-yi and Chen Guoqiang were fine. Both of them had trained before, so their physical fitness was very good, and they were not out of breath. However, Yang Guo was a university professor, and he did not exercise much. He and Lan Cao Kai were both out of breath, and they were so tired that their foreheads were sweating. The higher the altitude, the colder it was. The little ones couldn't take it anymore. Yang-yi had already picked up the delicate Yang Luoqi 20 minutes ago. The other three little ones were still holding on. Shi and Chen Shuyun's physiques were better. Although they were out of breath, they should be able to continue climbing. However, Lon Xian could not. Her chubby legs were trembling. If it was not for she holding her hand and shouting, Come on, Xian, The chubby girl probably would not be able to climb anymore. Everyone, take a break. Drink some water and eat some fruits to replenish your nutrition. We will continue climbing later. Fortunately, at this time, Mr. Shen organized everyone to take a break. Lan Hao Kai was so tired that he wanted to sit down directly. Fortunately, Yang Yi's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. He reached out and supported him. You are so tired, you can't sit down. Walk slowly. Xiaoyang. Xiaoyang. How far is it? Lan Hao Kai asked, out of breath. The stone steps spiraling up the mountain, although not steep, seemed to be impossible to climb. The mountain road in front of them turned again, and it seemed that there was no end to it. They could not see the top of the mountain because the dense forest and trees blocked their vision. It was worth praising that Jiangqing City had invested a lot of money in the Pavilion Mountain scenic area. Along the hillside, not only were there strong fences built on the edge, but there were also solid barbed wire nailed around the vegetation on the side of the mountain to prevent small-scale landslides or rolling stones from injuring people. The geological phenomenon of large-scale landslides was rare in Pavilion Mountain. If it really happened, no preventive measures could stop it. Because of such perfect construction measures, the several peaks of the Pavilion Mountain scenic area that had been open to the public attracted many mountaineers and tourists. There were many people on weekdays, but today was the weekend, so there were even more people climbing the mountain. Therefore, not only the parents and children of the Springfield Kindergarten's parent-child activity, but also many people climbed to the top of the mountain. A healthy man in his 40s who looked like he often climbed mountains passed by. When he heard Lan Hao Kai's question, he smiled and pointed at the fence, saying, "There's still about 2 kilometers to go. You've only climbed less than 400 meters. The last 200 meters are the hardest." At this time, Yang Yi and the others finally noticed that, while they were chatting and laughing, they did not notice that there was a pillar at every distance of the fence. There were words carved on the pillar, indicating the distance and height needed to complete the climb. It's still so far? Lan Hao Kai's legs turned to jelly. Fortunately, Yang Yi supported him. In order to support him, Yang Yi even put Yang Luoqi down. "Uncle Lon, do you want some water?" She was sucking on the straw of the water bottle that her father had taken out from his backpack. Seeing Lon Xian's father in such a sorry state, the little girl ran over obediently and handed over her own water bottle. Chapter 407. Lan Hao Kai was a little confused at first, and then he was a little touched. He turned his head to look for his daughter. The chubby girl was also drinking water. She was also tired, but her eyes were still very energetic. After drinking the water, her little face was red, just like little apple. Xian, look, she is so sensible and caring. You don't even know how to share a sip of water with Daddy. Lan Hao Kai complained as he panted. She also turned her head to look at Lon Xian. She raised her little hand, not knowing what to do. She, drink it yourself. Uncle has some too. Lan Hao Kai also thought of she at this time. He nodded at she lovingly and smiled slightly. Then I'll give it to you too. Lon Xian didn't feel that there was anything to complain about drinking water, so she didn't care. She walked over graciously and handed her water bottle to her father. Her tone seemed to be saying, "It's not a big deal. Here you go." Lan Hao Kai didn't care. He was very touched. He picked it up and pretended to drink a few mouthfuls. In fact, he covered his mouth with his hand and didn't drink at all. He even smacked his dry lips and sighed, "The water shared by my daughter is still the best." Yang Yi, who was next to him, couldn't help but laugh. However, he was relieved when he saw that Lan Hao Kai didn't collapse. He took off his hiking bag and began to dig out delicious food. There were snacks that she mentioned before, fruits, washed cherries, strawberries, and cut apple and starfruit. There were many people, and the children all liked his cooking, so Yang Yi really prepared a lot. After he finished digging, the long hiking bag suddenly deflated and became much lighter. Only a few bottles of water and she's clothes were left. Under his beckoning, all the little ones in the middle class, as well as their parents, gathered around. However, to Yang Yi's surprise, the children weren't very interested in the snacks they had been looking forward to for a long time. Instead, they were enthusiastic about the juicy, red cherries and strawberries that looked very attractive. Maybe they were too tired. The sweet snacks didn't suit their taste. In order to support them, the adults helped to eliminate the remaining snacks, and almost all the fruits were eaten by the children. At first, Lan Xian was a little hesitant. Facing the delicious food, she licked her lips and looked at Yang Yi. "Uncle Yang, but I haven't climbed up the mountain yet." She was already eating a cherry in her left hand and a starfruit in her right hand, but when she heard Lan Xian's words, she quickly put the starfruit back. However, the cherry stuffed into her mouth was still chewing, and she muttered, "Yes, I haven't climbed up the mountain yet, I can't eat it." Young Luochi, who was already unable to climb, was holding a beautiful strawberry happily and looking at it carefully. She looked at the strawberry in her hand with some reluctance and said sadly, "But, I want to eat." Yang Yi looked at Lan Xin, who was drooling, in amusement. He rubbed her little head and said to the children, "Eat it, it's okay. Uncle was just joking before. You guys are already very good to be able to persevere until here. After eating, let's continue climbing and see if we can persevere until we reach the top." At this moment, Lan Xian happily reached for the snack she wanted to eat, and Yang Luochi also smiled. As for Chen Shiyun, the little girl had already begun to eat. She almost buried her head in it, so how could she notice? She spat out the cherry core into the garbage bag held by her father. She raised her little head, and her little face, which was wrapped in a windbreaker, showed an eager expression. "Papa, Papa, I want to climb to the top of the mountain. I'm the best." Yang Yi forgot what he had said to his daughter before. He just smiled and patted her head, saying softly, "Yes, you have to do it." After a long period of rest and recuperation, the adults and children regained some of their strength and began to charge towards the higher peaks. Just like before, in the beginning, everyone was still talking and laughing, but before long, the little strength stored during the rest gradually disappeared, and only the sound of breathing was left in the team. After walking for a few hundred meters on the mountain road, there were no more steps, and the children began to be unable to support themselves. Young Luochi asked Yang Gua to carry her. She was so tired that she lay on her father's back in a daze. Chen Guoqiang also came over to tease the little girl. Yang Yi picked up Lan Xian, who was also unable to walk, and helped Lan Hao Kai carry his professional mountaineering equipment. "Give me some water, I can't do it." Lan Hao Kai gasped, took the water from Yang Yi's hand, drank it, and complained, "I'm old. I haven't been mountaineering for a few years, and I can't climb anymore." Okay, don't try to be brave. Take it easy." Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry and said, "If you really can't do it, you and Xian Air can wait for us here. We'll come down from the mountain and go back together." "No, how can you say no?" Lan Hao Kai waved his hand, panting, and looked at Lan Xin and said, "X-Air, Daddy will show you today that Daddy is still very strong." She was also panting, exhausted, but the little girl seemed to be infected by Uncle Lan's spirit. Her little face was tense, and her will was very strong. "Daddy." Lan Xian didn't know what to say. She was so tired that she could only snuggle in Uncle Yang Yi's arms, but seeing that her daddy had never shown such a strong expression, she pursed her lips and watched closely. In order to take care of Lan Hao Kai, Yang Yi's team slowed down. However, it was better to slow down than to stop. Along the way, there were still many parents who couldn't climb with their children. Not everyone could be like Yang Yi, who could carry a 4- or 5-year-old child and bravely climb to the peak. For example, Yang Gua and Yang Luochi could only regretfully stop and follow Teacher Kai to meet up with the team that had stopped. Yang Yi carried the chubby girl Lan Xian with one hand, and the fat man Lan Hao Kai with the other. He was actually the most tired, but Chen Guoqiang couldn't help him because he also had to carry Chen Shiyun up the mountain. Chen Shiyun's stamina was good, but she couldn't hold on anymore. The father and daughter who were still at loggerheads just now seemed to have made up. Chen Shuyun hugged her daddy's neck tightly, and heard her daddy's heavy breathing in front of her. She lay on her daddy's back, and her tired eyes showed her attachment. Perhaps they didn't know how to express their feelings, but at this moment, they should be able to feel the deep love between father and daughter, right? Lan Hao Kai's weight was getting heavier and heavier, but he still gritted his teeth and persevered. Yang Yi couldn't take it anymore. Even with his stamina, he began to pant heavily. In order to relieve his fatigue, Yang Yi said to Shi Shi while panting, "Shi Shi, Daddy will teach you a sentence today, okay?" Shi Shi didn't have the strength to speak. She grabbed her daddy's trousers and trudged with difficulty. She only raised her head and glanced at her daddy. "Better _late than never." Yang Yi looked ahead and said word by word, "It means that it's better to be late than never. Doing anything is the same, climbing a mountain is the same. Since you've chosen to do it, even if you're slow, you have to work hard to complete it. Climb to the top, even if it takes a long, long time. Because we're at the top of the mountain, we can always see further and more beautiful scenery than others who haven't climbed to the top. Let me give you another example, the story that Daddy told you before, the tortoise and the rabbit race. Although the little tortoise climbed slowly, he still finished the race in the end, but what about the little rabbit? She gave up halfway and lost the race." He didn't know if Shi Shi understood, but Yang Yi was gratified to see his daughter's unswerving determination on her tired little face. "Don't say it, don't say give up." Lan Hao Kai also tried his best to persevere, but miraculously, he could still squeeze out a few words. "Yes. Come on." Yang Yi roared to encourage them. Looking at the top of the mountain in front of them, he shouted, "Hold on a little longer, look, we're almost there." Wasn't it just a small mountain of more than 600 meters? These guys actually found it as difficult as climbing Mount Everest. If this news spread out, they would really laugh their heads off. But in the end, Yang Yi, who was watching the two fatties climb to the top of the mountain, actually felt full of pride. In fact, it was indeed something to be proud of. There weren't many families who could climb to the top of the mountain, let alone children. The other people on the observation deck were all adult citizens who often came here to exercise. Yang Yi first settled Lan Hao Kai down and sat down on the observation deck chair next to him to rest. Then, he carried the little girl who was so tired that she couldn't even carry her father, walked to the edge of the observation deck, and pointed at the winding mountain path and the dense forest below. "Shi Shi, look, these are the mountain paths that you just conquered. Look over here, isn't the scenery particularly good?" Yang Yi happily said to his daughter. The little girl looked at such a beautiful mountaintop scenery, and her tired little eyes were a little blurred. But at this time, she was a little speechless. Being carried by her father, she could only look at her achievements and the scenery that she deserved. Yang Yi couldn't tell how her heart was fluctuating. After drinking some water, Shi Shi, who recovered her spirit, looked at her father pitifully and said in a weak voice, "Papa, I'm great, aren't I?" Yang Yi was moved. He pressed his forehead against his daughter's forehead and said softly, "Today, I didn't help you much because I took care of Xinair and her father, but I really didn't expect that you could climb up with your own efforts. Papa can tell you, you're the best." The little girl's tired little face finally overflowed with a happy smile at this moment. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.